gotta leave it to the professionals.
Blessed by Bundy, blah, blah, blah.
Started off with a bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. Surfing on the web and I'm shooting at 3. I've been goated when I got my G. I'm an alien, boy, from a different planet, yeah. So I got my drink, I'm riding in the 1920s Model T Ford. Call her Era Lord. Call me Levi, playing on the keys, boy. And I'm about to put my gloves on. If I said it, then I meant that. Yeah, I like that one, I'm about to get that. Crash that whip for the drumsticks, whiplash. I'm about to get them all. Are you with that? In a white boat, surrounded by blue. I want one, but I got a cop too. I wanna fly high in the sky, arms out wide, trying to soar from a bird's eye view. I'm on fire, Ricky, Bobby, cracking the pavement, Whitney, Bobby. I'm a Saki bomb, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Bruce Wayne been a dog, and I keep it 101, cause I'm feeling kinda spotty. You sipping on some rock, and I'm sipping on octane. The only thing around my neck is the blockchain. Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up.
NFT, Twitter, blockchain. Seeing with the ghosts and we ballin' like the Brown James. Crypto. We can make a trade, get the memo. Reviews not falling for the FOMO. Listening to Coffee with Captain. You know we worldwide, they loco. I ain't never gonna stop rapping. Orlando, yeah, we working magic. We rocking Ethereum NFTs. I just went and caught me a half base. Man, I got a shout out
Started
to
off with a bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hella hoes on Web 2. I was living a dream, now I'm on Web 3. And it is what it seems, topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up.
Breaking the mood to choose one, but they got knowledge to move, son. I'm shocking in shades with my brother in suits, yeah, them blues is coming. Even though it's hard to pick, eeny, miny, mo, soda on the mix, no biting lips, it's time to go. Index number 1, no thumbs up, you gotta scroll. Looking at the ghost in studio, it's time to go. I had a helmet on by myself until I met a mask that wanted to have a face off. So I had to bring my chainsaw, full tank of gas in the drive with my brakes off. I'm A1, but a different kind of steak sauce.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain, powered by ApeCoin, where we dive into all things crypto, NFTs, Web3, and cutting-edge technology. Remember, nothing here is financial advice. Early-stage tech can be exceptionally volatile and risky. So grab your coffee and join Cap and Steve for today's conversation.
Welcome to the future.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain. GM, thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already done so, do us a favor, drop us a GM in the chat down below. Then head up top, smash that like, repost, and bookmark on today's space. We greatly appreciate it. Warms up the algo, lets everyone know we're here, does us a solid. The best GMers go hit all those chats. We're live over in the YouTube streets. We've got our abstract streaming in that, taking those top spots in the 8 to 10 o'clock slot over in the abstract streets. And the native X video feed also live up top. Go smash all those. Hit the reminder on the carousel. We've got another fun show lined up for tomorrow. If you've already, if you haven't hit that yet, and we will get rolling here in a sec. As always, I'm Captain, my co-host Steve. Never any financial advice on the show. Crypto is risky, NFTs are risky, meme coins are exceptionally risky. And go to zero moments noticed. Please don't put any money in you can't afford to lose. And know that Steve and I likely hold tokens we talk about from time to time here in the show. We are not financial advisors. Please don't follow us in any trades or take any financial advice from us. Just join us for some fun, some information, and education and fun along the way. GM Steve, how you doing, sir?
Good. Trying to give a little infocation here today, as Cap would put it. That's an interesting combined word. Lots of GMs in the chat early this morning. Do us a favor, as Cap said, get us over to Abstract Chat so we can stay in those top 3 spots. It really helps us. Or head us on YouTube. That helps as well. Appreciate everyone in there. Everyone in all the chats. GM Teacher Katie taking the top spot in the Abstract GMers again. She was not to be defeated. She was beat a couple days in a row for the first GM. And much like Mel in the X space, I think Teacher Katie is the abstract queen of the chat. So we're seeing that go down. Green Edge got in there, obviously. Von Frunten across all chats. General Wags across all chats. Machiavelli across all chats. Appreciate y'all. Saucy, good to see you out there this morning. Saucy hitting with a GM to all you tariff experts out there, or something to that degree, which I got a kick out of. GM, Diablito, Drew, everybody else. I need to change my lighting setup, by the way. I have noticed, like, I have these daylight lights. I am way too shiny. I have these lights. I'm just going to set them up, and I'm going to be in the dark tomorrow. I'm just going to commit to setting them up, and we'll deal with it as we go. Might even go off screen and do it today during the show. We shall see. GM Tebow, Drew Dobbins, Maria, good seeing you out there. Joey Vowles, always good discussion this morning. No audio from Mel. Hopefully it is working.
It came back. Yeah, I lost it for a second in the opening. No idea what happened, but I'm getting good at the unplugging and plugging back in. I'm getting quicker, Steve. I'm getting more efficient when it goes out.
Yeah, Kazi GM, Blaze Micro, Alpha Miner, Brick It All, Clay, Das Scrub, all of our good friends out there today getting her done. Cap, and yeah, I mean, I need to work on the lighting in here a little bit. Not gonna lie, that's like my next venture. I think. Dunk Cookie, good to see you out there. Dunk Cookie got that Skelly dude, and I'm very jealous. As mentioned, like I think it's Doodles, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Azuki. Their rares hit different than just any other collection. Good Vibes Club, obviously, I'll put in that category as well. I was corrected yesterday in the Good Vibes 101s by Zane. I shared them at the end of the show yesterday. Definitely good looking ones, but anytime I see this Skelly from Dunk Cookie, I do like the fact, Cap, and we started about this is good cold open material before we get we're not going to go, I don't think, deep into tariffs. We're not experts. I am going to share how I'm feeling because I'm feeling it. We got Garga maybe saying that the super secret project that Yugo's working on is on hold, which makes me sad.
Oh no, fucking greatest news I've heard yet, Steve. They don't have many more bullets left in the chamber. They can't be wasting them.
I agree. It makes me sad as a human. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say I couldn't be more on the opposite side of that. I was ecstatic when I saw they were delaying the super secret mission. It's just not the time. There's nothing they could do right now. That's good. They don't need to do anything. Like the market is bleeding. Ape floor is going like this. Like it would be the absolute worst time to drop something new right now when it's not needed. People are buying apes. People are collecting. Like things are going well from a momentum standpoint. And if they drop something now, it would be a wasted bullet. Like please don't wait until things turn.
There is a clever joke here to be made about the American economy and just don't do anything. Things are humming, but I'm going to hold on that one. No, it's, yeah, I mean, I
make the joke because I respectfully disagree. I think the American economy is not humming. Like if you've tried to like buy a house recently, it's I think without a doubt, the worst time of my entire life to buy a home right now. Like things aren't humming, like change was needed. I know you're on the other side of the tariff thing. I got murdered as a small business owner by tariffs against US businesses. So it's like something had to change. This same thing played out in 2016 and I wasn't even in the markets, but there was all the Trump beating the tariff drum then. And the first year of his administration was really rocky for the markets. And then things boomed. So it's like, I don't know. This stuff doesn't faze me at the highest level because I'm not like worried about majors. I'm not worried about the long-term impact of very volatile. Like if this is playing out, I think exactly like was described. Maybe people didn't expect the volatility in the market. I think I was a little naive to think it wouldn't be volatile with some of these changes. And it's early. Maybe it's the worst move ever and it does tank the economy. But to think like he said he's going to implement tariffs. I think he would implement tariffs and it would be a short-term boom before he does anything to reduce income tax. I think I was naive. Now, that's the key part of it. They've got to reduce income tax. Otherwise, if that ball doesn't drop, then this is all freaking craziness. But it's like we're like one inning into a plan, and I'm not fazed at all by it. And I think that that the economy's been pretty shitty. I mean, I buy groceries. I buy, I'm in the market for a home. Like it's not good. I think it's the worst it's ever been in my entire 44 years of my life. So maybe these aren't the right moves, but I'm here for the change. And the short-term volatility doesn't change my livelihood at all. I'm not like, oh shit, my 401k is down a little bit, which I wasn't selling today. Like that stuff doesn't faze me. And I don't know, like maybe this isn't right. I'm not an expert. Change was a necessity. Like we had to do something different. Things like status quo things just weren't getting better. And this is kind of like a ripping the Band-Aid off move. And I'm surprised at how much CT freaks out with this volatility, considering that we are in the most volatile market in the world. It's like just another day. If anything, the volatility has me wanting to maybe trade a little more, maybe actually take my shots at doing some swing trading, some channel trading, because I'll say it again. I think we're going to be range bound until this stuff figures its out, until we see the second, the third, the fourth chapter, whatever's next. Maybe it's all part of the deal and they get rescinded. I don't think they will. I think something else will come after this, and then how the market responds is going to be, I think, the telltale sign. I think this is all just short-term price action, and it's weird to me that CT is so I don't know. It's like people said before, like the markets are being driven by the president is now the driving KOL, and that's just really weird to me that crypto is swinging so much with a administration that is known to be extremely volatile. I'm having trouble reconciling the two.
I think you conflated a lot of things there, so I'm going to do my best here. I think number one, objectively, it is not the worst economy in the past few years that it has been in your entire lifetime. Like, there is no metric to support that. Like, it definitely is not the worst economy.
Right. Personally, my car insurance is
right, but like sample size of one to say like, hey, like things aren't going as well, and you need to pull data like inflation. You need to look at
all that
job
stuff.
data.
All my personal stuff. It's the highest expenses it's been in my entire life, and it's not even close.
Right, but objectively looking at the data of the economy, it is not. No. Like you're saying, like my car insurance is high. Like an individual car insurance bill does not correlate to the American economy on the whole, right? Like we are not worse than we were in 2008. We are not worse than we were in previous recessions and dip back. So like that's not the case for sure. Like so like like now if you're like, hey, personally, I've never felt more affected by this. I'm empathetic to that, right? Like you're saying like, hey, I had trouble shipping things. That was a problem. My bills are up. That's a problem. But on the whole, it is not the worst American economy we've ever had in your lifetime. Like there wouldn't be data to support. But like I think saying personally, I think that's perfectly fair. I agree with you on the volatility of the markets. It's going to happen in a volatile administration. I think part of the problem is like,
here's the thing, like 6 months ago, we were genuinely considering we might have to move out of the country. That's not a concern anymore. Like, it's wild to me how quickly CT has flipped. And it's like nothing that's happened has been a surprise. I think that everything that happens is a surprise though, in the sense that even in the past 100 days, there are Canada tariffs. Just kidding. We're bringing them down. Just kidding. We're delaying them. Yes, we're bringing them up. No, we're not bringing them up. Like, I think that level of uncertainty, like markets don't like uncertainty. And I think even a level of certainty that this was definitely going to happen on a schedule would have been one thing. But I think a lot of people, one, didn't expect it to be this bad. And two, didn't expect it to happen. So I think that responded. That is a surprise, how bad the markets have responded. But like the back and forth on tariffs, I expected this to play out almost identical to how it's happening. Like, it's not a surprise to me that tariffs were implemented. It's not a surprise that there's been a bunch of back and forth on tariffs. This is exactly what I expected. How drastically the markets have responded. Yes, that is surprising.
Yeah, I think that well, one, like I don't think tariffs were brought up this. I think part of the thing that like makes me uncomfortable, like what makes me deeply uncomfortable. And again, I'll just like we can jump into it. By the way, give us a like or retweet, comment on the room. We'll have the discussion. Then we're gonna bring on in about a half hour here. We're gonna be talking Ethos. Serpin's coming on. We're gonna do that. I think the part that's deeply troubling to me is that look, I'll just say it how it is. My co-author is an economist. 2 Nobel Prize economists endorsed my book. One of the top economists in the world reviewed my book, and all economists that I follow that I deeply respect, like, were the only ones paying deep attention to these tariffs before the election. Like a lot of people focused on anything crypto, focused on crypto. Other people focused on like all the stuff that the Democrats, I feel, also got wrong of not realizing that they were being preachy and judgy. The things about where we're like, hey, we might have to move out of the country because we're in crypto, and if the wrong president gets elected, we're literally, could be getting hammered across the board. I think a lot of people focus on those. The people I know who focused on the tariff stuff said that it was going to be a major problem and it wasn't going to work, and it's never worked, and it's never successfully worked. And when people give examples, you look at the amount of jobs that were lost and the amount of damage it's done to profits in the American economy on the whole. And those people said that. Those people who are sounding the alarm bells, we're now seeing those things come through to fruition. And I think we maybe,
stop the first inning. Like by themselves, yes, it is a train wreck for an economy if there's nothing else changes. I fully expect income taxes to be drastically reduced, maybe property taxes. If not, then yeah, it's going to be a train wreck. But this is just one half of a plan. And until the other half drops, it's bad for individuals. But how do you think this plays out if income tax below people making 150K gets eliminated, if property tax gets eliminated? Like, these are real things that are being talked about in the state of Florida. Like, property tax get eliminated, that would have a drastic impact on the current housing market. Like, things like one half of the plan is if the other half doesn't fall, then yeah, it is a train wreck. But I fully, just as I fully expected the volatility of tariffs, I fully expect something to change with taxes, whether it's income tax, whether it's property tax. Like, I don't know, I'm not an economist, but that's part of what I've been led to believe is part of the plan is we're going to see a significant reduction in income tax or capital gains tax, or one of those balls has to drop. If not, then we're screwed.
Well, like a couple things on that. I mean, for income tax, one needs income and there's going to be jobs loss. So we're just going to see that, right? I mean, that's what happens when these sort of things get implemented. Companies lose profits. They cut jobs because that is one of the logical first things they cut. They cut back on innovation and things where they're able to previously put money because they only are going to sell products that work. They're going to pass through those. Like I heard the argument, like a lot of people make this Nike argument. They're like, Nike makes all this money over here. They should move to the operations of the United States. Well, one, given the volatility and unpredictability of the administration, like, would it even make sense to do that? Because they don't know what's going to happen. And then two, it's still going to be less expensive to make products overseas. They're just going to pass those on to us and only make products that seemingly work. So, again, like, I'm more concerned because, like, is this only the first inning, or is this Oregon saying we're only down 34-0 in the first half? Right? There are different ways to look at it where it's like, oh, it's only just started begun. I mean, again, the part that makes me scared, and this is me, like, I mean, I've been back and forth on all things politics for my entire life. Like, I like to listen to
just like first person principles. Does it seem fair that all these other countries should impose tariffs on the U.S. and us not to impose any back? Does that seem fair?
It's
just
not,
like first principles.
But I don't think that works here, because it's not how it plays out. It's just simply going to be a raise on goods coming into the United States because we are consumers as an economy. Or
it brings manufacturing goods back to the U.S. and creates jobs. Like, that is part of what could happen.
But the likelihood of that happening is significantly lower than the likelihood of companies just cutting jobs and raising prices. That's how it's played out for like 100 years. And so, like,
when is the last time like this tariffs like this were implemented in the last 100 years?
The 30s, I believe. And it didn't work. And since then, in 100 years, the only examples we have of this ever having even a potential neutral effect, I believe, was prior to me being born in the 70s. So I guess my point being, like, we're like,
so things are extremely different than the 30s or the 70s. Our world is vastly different than it was on every element, from globalization to technology. Like, things are, so maybe it doesn't work, but I truly don't believe, like, status quo was not working either. Like, something had to change, and, like, I appreciate taking a big swing, just like I appreciate Yuga taking a big swing. Like, maybe it doesn't work, but
take a big swing. Yuga takes it when Yuga takes a big swing. They do it based on the market. They're experts. We just talked about, like, evaluating all those conditions, things like that. When everybody who has studied this their entire life and trained all of the smartest people in the world at universities are telling me, like, this is bad, I tend to believe them over, like, hey, let's try something different. It's like, again, like, if I'm going to try to lose weight, I'm probably going to talk to a trainer and a dietitian, not be like, you know what? I've never tried eating McDonald's every day for a month. Maybe this is going to work. Like, because there's a lot of protein in Big Macs. Like, it doesn't work like that. And so it may work. I'm not, like, again, this isn't me trying to, like, overreact. Sky is falling. Like, I'm genuinely discussing how I'm feeling about it.
And this isn't a shot at, like, Scott or any of your other economist friends, but, like, economists have been wrong throughout history. Look at Paul Krugman, who said the internet was a fad. Like, and he was one of the world-renowned economists.
Using an individual example versus an amalgamation of Nobel Prize winners, of, like, literal Nobel Prize winners.
It was Paul Krugman, like, a Nobel Prize winning economist, was the most wrong person in the world about technology. Just like people are going to be wrong about.
But a guy being wrong about technology who studies economics
he was a Nobel Prize winning economist. That's the point.
But you're comparing, like,
a Nobel Prize winning economist to another Nobel Prize winning
economist. No. What you're comparing is somebody talking out of their scope of expertise about something they're not an expert about, to people
I don't know.
talking about their scope.
I think the internet had a pretty big impact on world economies.
So
But
your
biggest
take is that an economist
people can be wrong.
should
People are experts that have never no one knows, man. Like, this is unprecedented.
This is the most fallacious argument you can make, is that, well, people are wrong sometimes, therefore every single person who studies this, who's talked about it, is probably also wrong.
It's not every single person. That's absolutely, because there's also economists that are on the other side. Look at Ray Dalio. Like, there's world-renowned economists who think this could actually work. Like, there's both sides. You can't just pick and choose. Like, oh, this world-renowned economist says this is going to fail. This other world economist says
Ray Dalio is a hedge fund manager. Like, those are very different jobs. Like, it's just it's to like, but and again, I'm not trying to say like it's. I hope. I
just don't. When people speak in absolutes, I think that's very dangerous. And no one knows. Like, this is unprecedented. Yeah, tariffs existed in the 1930s. Very different than the 2020s. It's a very different time.
But like every single piece of this, again, I'm not trying to like be a dick here, but every single piece of this is kind of a straw man where you're like, I want to try something different because something wasn't working. Okay, but that doesn't mean that different thing is correct.
Right? It may not be. I'm saying it may not be.
The experts who are saying, and again, to the way I approach it. What's that?
What makes them an expert on tariffs?
What makes economists an expert on tariffs?
I'm sorry, but Paul Krugman, you're naming literally people who just opinionate on economics. Do you know who the most successful economics professionals are? They're fucking traders at Citibank, running $1 trillion desks.
Aware of that.
Wait.
The comment was specifically about Nobel Prize winning economists. That's why I went there. Because
I've listened to you just say a ridiculous amount of stuff.
Was Paul Krugman not a Nobel Prize winning economist? That's what I said.
Shit about Paul Krugman. Like,
he was a Nobel Prize winning economist. That's what we're talking about.
Great. That's fantastic. And the people who literally trade on whether or not economy go up or go down and make trillions of dollars in bets every day, because if you're literally running the interest rates desk at Citibank, you are trading on $1.5 trillion a day in short-term debt, assuming whether or not the economy is going to go up or go down, because that's your entire job. And if you're not good at it, you don't have that job. And they all think this is the dumbest fucking thing ever.
So you're saying like a hedge fund manager would be a better...
I'm going to put it with the people who professionally determine whether or not this economy is going up or down, because that's all they do.
So like a hedge fund manager, like a Ray Dalio, is someone you would put your trust in?
No.
Because does he not manage one of the world's largest hedge funds?
I'm not talking about hedge. I'm literally talking about people who trade. Your hedge guys are looking at shorts. Guys who trade on literally commercial paper short-term debt are determining whether or not you get to lend or borrow at a specific rate for a specific period of time. And that is entirely based upon the future of the economy. That's all they do. That's all they do. And they don't move $1 trillion a year. You have desks that are moving $1.5 trillion in paper every day. Okay? So I'm going to drop back down. You guys go back to arguing. But like, and why did your car insurance go up? Did you guys not have an accident in your car? Like within the last year and a half?
Yeah, I had accidents prior to. Okay. And my car insurance never quadrupled.
That's perfectly fine. My car insurance has gone down, and so has my homeowner's insurance. So, I mean, we could bring individuals up and just ask them. More or less.
That's kind of my point. Is like, and again, like the point I'm making is I want to make something clear. I'm not like, and I don't, Cap, I know you're not the same way either. So I just want to make this point. I am not somebody who is like, I have a political agenda and therefore I'm like, haha. I'm somebody who throughout my entire sort of life, I do like the color commentary from Joe though, because it is helpful for me. But like I'm somebody who my entire life I try to, or at least
just to call in the experts, car insurance on average has increased 12% in 2023 and 16.5% in 2024. That's on average. That's not me personally. That's the averages throughout the U.S.
I want to focus on like I want to say focus to the point of like my point being like I'm not one who like looks around and like it says like I have an agenda and therefore I'm going this direction. I'm one who says, okay, I want to like take in both sides of the data. I want to look at like what the people who are positively saying this is good say. I want people who are saying this is bad say. And oftentimes that leaves me on an island with a lot of people. And it actually makes me relatively political homeless. Because I end up going into these situations where, I have no, I might believe in one part of one party and one part of another party, and therefore nobody likes me about it. So I'm not like one who's like looking for validation or confirmation bias. I'm just simply saying that, people that I know who study this and have done this their whole life are the ones who kind of called saying this is a bad idea. The people Joe's talking about, the people that I know and talk to on a regular basis. And they've called sort of this first 100 days. It worries me because even when I try to do my own research, I will try to have AI argue against me and tell me why I am wrong about this, or tell me this. And at one point I was talking to Grok and I was like, it seems like you are negatively spinning this. And Grok said, you're picking up on my vibe. The chances of this working are really slim. And it's like, I would like this to work and I hope it works. And I will gladly put my hand up and say
it's not going to work is in day one. Although it's starting to show the impact. I just pinned up top the responses that these countries have had. It's starting to have almost a near immediate impact. There's no world where it turns the economy on day one. It just doesn't happen. It's like there's a tariffs by themselves are not going to do the job. There's a second act here. And maybe it doesn't work. I don't know, but I'm not going to react after it gets announced when we knew it was getting announced. That's my point, is people are losing their minds by a plan getting rolled out that we knew was coming. That's what I'm having trouble.
I think people are upset because of the downstream potential impacts. And that's what's happening is that we didn't know what it was going to look like. Two, you never know. I mean, again, Trump's a wild card. You get full, unfiltered, Trump from the tap when he takes over your country. And part of that is him saying
part of the volatility. He's a wild man. So the fact that we're going to respond on everything he says, that's the crazy part for me.
But this is not just something he says. This is something he implemented that affects people. People are going to lose their jobs. And that sucks. And I'm just saying, the way I'm feeling today is I'm not excited about the markets. I'm not excited about us pissing off our allies, especially our land-bound allies. And I'm not excited about where the economy's headed. That's all. It's how
our land-bound allies, Canada said they're moving towards no tariffs. That sounds like a win to us.
We're in a spat with everybody who's connected to us and everybody who's connected to us.
Do we think it was going to go easy? People, we're going to it's a negotiation. It's a change. Change is freaking hard on a personal level. I can imagine it's a multiple on a nation state level. Of course it's going to get ugly before it gets better. Of course. They think, we're going to imply these 10 to 50% tariffs and it's going to go swimmingly. That's crazy talk. Of course it's going to be hard at first. Maybe they don't cave. Maybe things get really, really, really bad. Or maybe they say, yeah, this has been ridiculous. We've been gouging our American allies. We should probably not tax them so much. And they reduce their tariffs. And then we get back to normal. But we're in the first inning. Maybe the U.S. loses the game. Maybe not. We just don't know. No, and even I don't care if you're a world-renowned economist. They don't know. This chapter has not played out yet. No one knows. Mainly because we have a wild man calling the shots. No one knows what he's really going to do.
I guess my point is and I'll let Funky get in here because I know you probably have some. Funky's going to probably try to bring us down to earth a little bit. But I guess my point being, if on one side you have a wealth of historical examples and data over the past 100 years, including in the past 10, this not working. And you have people who aren't experts in the field saying this not working. And to Joe's point, you have people managing, money saying this is not working in those particular circumstances. It's worrisome to see it implemented. That's my stance. I'm totally cool being but I don't like like I said, to me, it's fallacious to be we've never seen this before, so maybe it'll work. It's that's not how, that's true on paper, but it doesn't change the percentage chance of a 16 seed and never beat a 1 seed. Did it happen? Sure. Does that mean it's a likely outcome? Not necessarily. And so I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that it's actually happening. It's going to hurt the economy, certainly in the short term, potentially in the long term. And that is worrisome. Now, to your point, bags, trading, all those things, great. Stack buy. When COVID had a major stock market hit, I bought a bunch of American companies that I knew wouldn't be affected by COVID, and it worked out well for me financially. I'm just very uneasy about where we're at personally. And I also like part of it. And again, this is me being completely honest. And then Funky, I'll let you jump in. Like I'm being completely honest. Part of my feeling on this is that we went through a brutal bear market and we looked like we were going to have some positivity. We're getting some good legislation. And now we're probably entering another brutal bear market across stocks, across, there's a good chance we do. Not for sure, but there's a good chance we do. And on a personal level, that sucks. And so and the fact that the people who have been right about a lot of things in the first 100 days are telling me it's going to suck makes me feel deeply uncomfortable.
I have a serious question. How many of those economists are Democrats? 100% of them?
I don't think so. No, definitely not. Definitely not all of them. But that also, I would say, particularly in the case of a lot of people that I know in that particular height, they're not, they would look at they would look at how the Democrats approached a lot of things very, very negatively coming into this election and are very aware of why they lost and how they lost. So that part of it, I would say, is the political part, I would say, is a complete non-factor to the tariff part. Like those things are completely not interconnected, even those who are, because it's not like they aren't critical of Democratic policy as well. These are just people who just study the way the economy works. Funky, go ahead and get in here, GM.
GM, I love the energy. I love the heat you guys are bringing between each other.
I'm pissed, Funky. I wanted to talk.
Wait, hold on. Take a deep breath.
I want to take a deep breath and talk Major League Baseball. I hit 100x last night on Underdog, and I'm as deep in Major League Baseball battle royale drafts as I was NFL football. But we got 31 minutes in. I didn't even get a chance to victory lap my 100x last night. Back to you, Funky.
I just wanted to just share a couple of points. I think Joe made some great points up here too, right? I mean, traders are going to do that. They're going to follow the trend. They're going to do whatever is
of course
going to make the most money.
It's a short-term trader mentality. Of course they're good, and they should be shorting this market. Like it was inevitable it was going to be extremely volatile. They're being smart.
To your point, Cap, I think this is completely unprecedented. It's very difficult to understand where this is going to go. I understand, to your point, Steve, the nervousness that this creates in the markets. I was just going to say that, yes, I think part of what the grand plan is, and whether or not this works out is a complete mystery, is to repatriate many of these American jobs. You got to think about JD Vance. You think about Middle America. You think about the Rust Belt, which you guys are keenly aware of because you basically live there, or used to in your case, Cap. And
I saw that area get decimated in the last decade because of this globalization, because of these tariffs. I lived through that. I saw thriving small towns in rural America become basically a hotbed for fentanyl and opioids. And there's all the manufacturing got ripped out of these economies, and it decimated rural America. I lived through that.
Sure. The one wild card in my mind about all this, even more so than the tariffs and everything else, and this whole part of the plan to repatriate these American jobs or make these jobs created for Americans, is AI and robotics. Yep. I just think where this is all going, and it's happening so fast, they may be trying to bring back jobs and onshore them, but will AI, corporations, they just want to make money.
This is it. This is the biggest challenge for U.S. jobs. Is I think you're right. I think this Funky's spot on. I'll give it right back to you. The big impact here is there's going to be a lot of U.S. manufacturing brought back. I'm pretty sure, unless this tariff thing is short-lived. But a lot of those jobs aren't going to be filled with humans. They're going to be done with AI. This is going to, I think, accelerate the boom of AI in people and organizations using AI replacing human beings.
Same. And I was just going to say last thing, because my pre-workout is really kicking in and I got to get in this gym because I'm now starting to buzz like you guys. But the one thing I thought was hilarious, go look at the list of the things that you pinned for the tariffs where it says France retaliation locked in. Everybody's wine and cheese just got way more expensive. Anyhow, I'll step down and you guys have a great show.
Yeah, right on. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's like I said, I'm not
Steve and I spoke in Spanish while we're in French. Now the French really hate the Americans.
I'm not trying to take some this isn't a political that's the thing that I sometimes, and I don't want this to be conflated because I think people conflate I don't like this thing with politics. It's I like Trump's cryptos policies. I don't like his tariff policies. I'm not a tariff expert. I've said I'm not a tariff expert. I talk to people who study this shit for a living who have said the whole time, bad idea, don't understand the logic behind it. And I am trusting those sources while also trying to argue against them in research and reading other experts. I've got some suggestions in the war room, some people that I'm going to try to read. I'm excited about like reading both sides and trying to understand it. It's just the part that made me uncomfortable is leading up to this. I was trying to make a bull case for myself and I couldn't find good examples. So, hopefully it works differently. I just I don't see the logic. Like, again, like people are like, well, Nike's making shoes for this much over here and then they're doing it here. It's like, cool. They're going to cut jobs and pass those on to us. I don't know that manufacturing jobs coming back to America is the likely outcome. Maybe it is. I would like to think so. But I just don't know that that's a likely outcome to this. But yeah, we'll have to see if that impacts it. And especially again, when we have instability of not knowing what's coming, why would you move operations or make those changes? Like, I just think the changes that are likely going to happen, and it makes me nervous to see people lose their jobs and see a worse economy. And that part makes it.
I don't care either way, but again, back to first principles. Do you think it's good that one of the great American brands, one of the great American businesses in Nike employs 450,000 people in Vietnam across 130 factories and they're not paying them a fair wage? Like, is that good?
But see, this is my problem. Like, we dive down these rabbit holes of these tangential pieces. Like, my car insurance is up.
You mentioned Nike.
Nike has jobs over. No, and I get that. But I'm talking about like a macro response from Nike versus.
I remember. People complain about Nike and having all these jobs offshore and not paying people fair wages and people committing suicide and slave labor. Same thing with Apple. And now,
this doesn't solve that. That's my point. Like a solution. A solution that doesn't solve it and has never solved it because it hasn't worked before. Because
when in Nike's existence has this even attempted to be implemented?
This is the this isn't about Nike's existence. This is about the history. This is about the history of what this has done. Look at the history of when
I'm asking. I don't know whenever in Nike's history.
10 years ago. Well, 10 years ago when the tariffs happened, or roughly 10 years ago when the Trump administration won. Previously in other tariff situations, not Nike, but other jobs don't come back. It's a matter of getting jobs cut because profitability is cut. Put yourself in a CEO's position. Do you want to move all operations in the United States, get a lower profitability margin, or do you want to pass 20% on to your customers, slim down to what you can to survive until the tariffs go away, and lay off workers being like, look, we don't need these many jobs anymore. Economy's bad. Because that's what's happened in bad economic situations like this before.
So instead of cutting some jobs, they've offshored 100% of them to Vietnam. I just damn if you do, damn if you don't. Like, that's the part. It's like, we don't know. This may not bring any jobs back to the US, or it might. Like, we don't know. There's
no historical precedent to say they will, I guess is my point.
Agreed. And there's no historical precedent to say that it won't.
Yes, every tariffs in history is the historical precedent to say they won't. Yes. Like, that's the point. Every single precedent. You can find at best like a neutral one in the 70s. That's my point about saying, like, I'm not trying to be like, oh my God, doom and gloom. I'm just like, okay, show me an example of where this worked. And
okay, here's an example. In February, just this year, based on these tariffs, Apple committed to over $500 billion building out in the US, creating 20,000 new jobs. Hyundai and LG, $5 billion. Johnson & Johnson, $55 billion. Samsung, 17. All these have been in the last few months because
show me the results of the jobs that have come through in the past month. Show me the results that have been hired and come through and the net negatives or positives after the tariffs, because we don't have a historical precedent. Someone saying we're going to bring jobs to try to curry favor with an administration is one thing. Someone saying that they're going to bring jobs. Someone bringing jobs versus laying off jobs is a whole nother thing. And I guess that's my point is like,
okay, we'll see how it plays out. We don't know. Like, these have all been announced, so we can either take these companies at the word or say, oh, they're just trying to curry favor. We don't know.
Correct. I'm just saying historically we have zero examples of it working. That's the point. Like, zero examples of it working historically is my worrisome, is why I'm saying, like, I'm worried about it, because like saying like, hey, maybe it's going to be different this time. Cool. Let me put my hand on the stove again. Maybe I won't get burned this time. It's like, that's like,
I just don't think you can say zero examples of the tariffs working when it worked for 100 years before the Great Recession. Like, they worked in this country. That's why our country, there was an income tax. Like, it worked in history, maybe not in modern history, but it certainly worked. So you can't say it never worked.
Right.
Like,
So something
survived off tariffs.
Correct. So now our example is, hey, back when you fought with a musket and we thought smoking was healthy and there wasn't running water in houses, things worked really well. In the era,
basically as different as a pre-internet and an internet society. Like, I would say it's much more different now than it was in the 80s compared to the Musket era.
I would say not much. Well, I would strongly disagree with that. But regardless of that point, I think it's not terribly different than it was in 2018. But we shall see. I know we got some hands and we got Serpin coming on here in a little bit. Let's let J25 get in here, and then we'll go Joey, and then we'll keep it moving through.
GM, thanks guys. Good talk. Definitely a lot going on. First of all, if you look back, you talked about Canada. No Canadian tariffs were put on the U.S. that weren't negotiated in the MCA. So whoever negotiated that MCA deal last time, I don't remember exactly who it was, but you should talk to that person about all of these horrible things that are being implemented. But when you go back to like the 1800s, it was a much more regional basis. People were going across the ocean would usually die in those periods. So things have just completely changed from that point. And the last thing I'll bring up is look at the UK in the 50s. They did a very similar program to this as they were becoming a dying national world power, and had the exact same protectionist mentality, and look where it's led them. So there's a lot of precedent to look at. I agree that certain tariffs targeted can be useful, but widespread just breaking down markets is just foolish.
Yeah, that's I like well said. And again, like it's not a matter of like me trying to be like, oh my God, like this sucks or it's some political statement. It's just trying to rationalize and wrap my head around what's happening here. And it worries me based on the data I'm seeing. And I guess we'll have to see where it nets out. But Joey, go ahead and get in here.
I'm here for the MLB talk. We've talked about tariffs in the war room, and I don't really have much else to say, but I'm here for Cap's MLB talk.
Well, I am definitely going to veto MLB talk at 8:41, so we are not going to do that because we have Serpin coming up in 4 minutes or so. We got AI with Bunchu coming up. And look, it's relevant, and it's relevant to the crypto market.
And I do have one thing to say. Don't judge so fast. I'm on Team Cap.
That's it. It is like it literally got announced yesterday, and people are losing their minds over this. Maybe it's the worst announcement ever. We don't know, and anyone who is certain they know how this is going to play out, they're lying to you.
I don't think anybody's certain. I just think people are very worried about the direction it's going, and I just think it's
be worried. Is it not okay for me to be worried about where our country was heading? I was very worried.
No, so was I. I agreed with you.
I'm less worried now. That's how I feel. I'm not saying everyone has to feel the same way, but I think reacting on the day after new policy gets implemented that is probably going to change very soon is it's just very short-sighted in my opinion.
I think it's literally the opposite of short-sighted. But Chris, go ahead and get in here.
GM, great to be back. Been doing a lot of things, so I want to just drop a little bit of consideration for the discussion about international relations. So there's generally accepted 4 levers of power that nation states use against each other, whether a politician or a king or prime minister or whatever, and they're diplomatic, information, military, and economic. And what we're seeing play out is the economic part. All 4 of those levers are related. I use an economic lever against you, you use a military lever against me, because that may be what is effective or what I have the most strength to do or the most availability to do it. If I don't have a small economy but a good military, I'm going to use more military, or I'm going to use more information. And we see that with bots and with deep fakes and with all of these things as nations try to influence each other to gain leverage, status, power, so on and so forth. So what you're seeing is economics play out in real time. And I would argue you're seeing it at a faster level than maybe ever before in history, because we don't rely on the telegraph or the Pony Express or the radio to spread these. We do it at literally the speed of light on the internet. And then we have a lot of things that are not easily verified or unverifiable as sources of information. And they all have their own bias, just like the trading desks and the hedge funds and middle America and politicians all have their own biases to go along with this, as do nation states. They're all trying to gain an end, and they will use whatever means that they feel is valid and necessary to do that. So what you have to realize is there's a much bigger picture beyond this when you talk about using tariffs. The president has decided to use tariffs to gain leverage because the US has a massive global economy. And you see companies that are trying to hedge their bets by saying, yeah, we'll come back and invest in the United States and we'll be done by 2027, 2028, 2029. Well, okay. Those changes for companies especially can be changed just as quickly and move back offshore as we've seen them do multiple times. So I just want to throw that out there for discussion. I find it incredibly interesting, but I'll keep my comments there.
Good.
I
Okay.
just wanted to bring up real quick. Yeah, that's a great point. Look at the Foxconn deal from his last administration. They promised tons of manufacturing. It turned into be basically a little office park with 10% of what was promised.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Just to give like a historical, like because we said like there's no historical examples. The 2018 I actually had up here in a second, and I'll pull it. Oh yeah, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum, and a skew of duties on Chinese goods up to 25% worth $250 billion. The aim was to revive manufacturing in the United States and shrink the China trade gap. Steel jobs uptick slightly by 8,000, but a Federal Reserve study pegged net job loss at 75,000. So that and basically that's sort of what worries me is like historically when you look at
but we had the pandemic though. That's not fair. The pandemic hit literally.
We had the pandemic in 2018.
The pandemic hit the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. Like to say that like there was not enough time given for all of these things about like bringing jobs back to the United States. We started to see the pandemic in the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020. So there was not enough time for all of these jobs to come back.
Well, to be fair, the pandemic didn't really hit until the end of Q1 in 2020, if we're being fair. Because
I mean, we started to see it overseas in the end of 2019. People started to get sick. I remember March of 2020 is when I got sent home, but people were starting to get sick the beginning of 2020. So either way, though, like we're still judging I'm not saying those numbers are wrong, Steve, but I think if the pandemic doesn't hit, is there a chance those numbers are very different?
Yes.
Right. Again, if my aunt had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. But like the fact of the matter is like they implemented tariffs in 2018 within the study that went within a year and a half of that, we had a net loss of 75,000 jobs and a net gain of 8,000 jobs. So a net loss of jobs. I'm not like, again, I'm not trying to like, and you can find the problem is this wouldn't be a problem.
I fully expect a net loss of jobs over the next year and a half, by the way. Like
okay, then we're aligned on that.
Both with tariffs and AI. Like I just jobs are going to be reduced. I think that's almost a certainty. Like there's going to be less jobs. More people will be more productive. I felt this way well before tariffs. Like I just don't even think that's a debate. There's going to be, unless new jobs get created, unless new manufacturing jobs, unless there's a comment in the chat about nursing and how we need more nurses. Like the job landscape is going to be extremely different a year from now than it is today. 2 years from now, be even more different. Whether tariffs they go on forever or they get turned back tomorrow, there's going to be less jobs. I think that's almost a given, the way our world's heading.
Yes, but well, look, we got to bring Serpin in. We have to put a bow on the discussion on that one because I think that there is like a larger discussion there because I think again those are two things very different. Eliminating jobs because technology moves up, that's happened every era in history, and that's actually ended up being a net positive for society overall if you look at it generally on the whole, or you can say that. Moving jobs because companies are cutting costs because they're passing costs on to customers and have lower profitability. That's a different discussion altogether.
It's a flawed metric. It's like, it's to Joey's point of like looking at
losing jobs is not a flawed metric. That is a very important metric in the United States.
If we're talking about the impact tariffs are having, it's a flawed metric because we just agreed the job market is going to change significantly due to AI. So
oh no, I'm not putting those two things together. I'm saying those are two very separate things.
They are very separate things.
Losing jobs because of technology is one thing. Losing jobs because of a self-inflicted wound is another thing. It's like we talked about Doodles. Doodles getting railroaded by the market would be one thing. Doodles getting railroaded if their founders are so involved in the project is yet another thing. Like doing it to yourself is a whole nother ballgame, right? Like, and so I think like
they're impossible to untie, though. Like the impact is going to happen, and it's impossible to know.
No, they're very easy to untie. If one is not implemented, it doesn't. Like,
But if they're both being implemented, it's impossible to know which is having the impact.
I think it's very possible.
Okay, but are you a buyer of a Ford Taurus at 150K? Because
No.
that's what it would cost if you bring that back to the state.
That's just a ridiculous statement.
I think. Look,
Go
let's
do the math. It's not.
Okay. I would bet any amount of money that we're not paying 150 grand for a Ford Taurus.
It's
not happening.
Okay. If you're making every single part in the States at $40 an hour, you are 100% raising those prices.
Now, I'm not buying a Ford then.
Extremely high.
There's other companies are doing it more.
So you're going to buy a $250,000 Tesla. You're going to buy a GM truck for 400.
Let's watch it happen. I would bet any amount of money that Tesla prices actually get reduced.
I'm going to get the inexpensive import car. So that's what we'll do. I'll end up getting my I'm going to get my Honda because they make the parts cheaper overseas and bring it in and get tariffed, pass that on to me just a little bit, and that's what's going to happen. But hey, let's we're going to have plenty of time to see it play out. It's day one afterwards. I'm feeling easy. I'm worried. Cap's feeling good. That's good.
I don't feel good. I'm just not reacting on a one day. I don't feel good. I don't feel good at all. I don't feel good at all about the market. But it's the fucking market. The market's going to do its thing regardless of what we think or what we do, how we react to it. I'm not going to let tariffs impact how I feel about my day-to-day life. It doesn't change anything.
This isn't the market. This is a self-inflicted wound, and this isn't the first time.
And then that's the point I'm making. Like we're putting the spoke in the bike and falling out and saying whose fault is this? But we'll see where it nets out. Like you said, we'll see where it nets out.
Can I ask a quick question? Do you think in 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic, we were better off than we were the last, call it 5 years, call it 2 years?
Sorry, I'm
2018.
Let's table this till tomorrow, just because I do want to keep moving and I want to go through it. And like, I think it's like, I think like we're conflating a lot of things together. I want to organize my thoughts. I want to text Bunchu and let him know that we're running a little late on AI with Bunchu, because we got to bring in Serpin, because we got we want to talk about innovation. Let's bring Serpin on stage. Let's talk a little bit about something really cool that he's building over in Ethos. Hard pivot, but it's been a rocky morning of discussion with people on both sides.
Serpin, we got to know, what's your take on tariffs?
Oh my God, dude! I won't answer. Yeah,
your Ethos review is hinging on this answer.
You've got enough shit to worry about right now with everybody on the timeline. Now, for people who missed it, if you're not familiar with Ethos, it's a really interesting. I am fascinated with on-chain usage. We had Serpin on the show previously. We talked about the idea of on-chain reputation and the way it can actually help, sort of codify people and who they are, particularly within the crypto space. And, Ethos has reviews. You can upvote those reviews. There is staking, where you actually put your money where your mouth is, sort of proof of stake with humans, which I think is a pretty cool concept as well. And I will say, I'm going to have some tough questions. I come in peace. I like the platform. I always want to say, you have to have your guard up right now, though, because I understand it has been a crazy, probably week for you. So if they missed it, and I'm going to have you give the kind of what you did in a minute, there were some updates to Ethos. A lot of people's score went down, and the reaction by a lot of people were they saw a number go down on the reputation. They freaked out. A lot of people didn't even know what the updates were. So talk about those updates and actually what it's been like sitting in your seat the last week, because I imagine it's been a little turbulent.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. It's something that we've kind of learned to expect. We launched in testnet 5 months ago, and even back then people were getting upset with us whenever we changed the credibility scores, and it was on testnet. You're like, this is meaningless. So yeah, we made some changes on Friday, primarily around two parts of the credibility score. One was when you invited someone, you gave them basically an instant credibility boost, and that led to kind of what I would call creep across all of the scores. With that creep, what ends up happening is you basically, because everyone's score depends on each other, once you introduce something that into the equation that becomes a little overpowered, it basically lifts everyone up. And so it was kind of a rising tides thing where we started looking at the data and you're like, oh my God, like, look at all of these people that have like shot up in score super quickly. They got to reputable because they went out and farmed it, or they asked their friends to review them, which, to be clear, it's what I was telling people to do. If you know people, you should review them. Combine that with another part of the feature. Yeah, I came with my backwards hat today. Combine that with another part, which was whenever you got upvoted on your content, so content you wrote onto Ethos, you were actually getting credibility score boost from that. And we took a step back and we said, is that actually what credibility means? Like, if you write good quality content, we want to reward you, but not with credibility score. That doesn't say that you're any less of an asshole or not, right? If you wrote good things that got upvoted. And so you put these two things together and you look at it from like the holistic view of like, oh my God, all of the scores are rising together. The guys at the top who were like the group leaders would invite people on their team or whatever. They would instantly be giving them 220 credibility. And so, yeah, we recognized the problem. We saw a lot of people farming the upvote thing where they would just go upvote each other's content like crazy. And that was getting away from the point. It basically led to a point where we're like, these scores are not like insightful anymore. And the abundance of feedback we got was, oh my God, I don't recognize half of these people. You know, these people are flexing that they're reputable, and who are they? Like, where did they come from? And then you've got other people who did have reputation, and you're like, wait a second, none of them have high scores. And there's a little bit of challenge with like, well, some people farmed it and other people are just kind of letting it play out. But it was pretty clear when we looked at the data that like it was getting abused. So yeah, we made a change. And yeah, to your point, wasn't the most popular change that we made, and a lot of good lessons learned from making that change, even though, you know, we've kind of done it a couple of times now. Got a nice bit of blowback on Twitter because of it.
Yeah, and I actually want to ask that question because I think you actually legged in really nicely there before I get into like more specific questions, which is you said that, look, you learned some things during this change.
Mm-hmm.
My you know, in my feedback, and I said on this show, you're always open to feedback. I've jumped in your replies and kind of said, hey, here's how I feel about it. And I always approach things try to approach things. I do have emotional reactions. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit of a baby back bitch when my score first went down. I looked at it and I was like, don't feel great about that. What the hell? Is this an error? I reeled myself in. I'm like, okay, let's think of this from a product perspective, which I like the way you think about it. But my general takeaway when I tried to observe it was, one, people take it seriously because they're like, well, damn, my reputation just went back. And this is like me telling me I'm less reputable. That hurts. And so you're playing around with that. So I think like, and two, it's like, there's a sort of a difference between, I talked about like difference between product experience and like product quality. And I think you're strong on product quality. Like, I think every time I talk to you, I'm like, that is some right brain shit that makes sense. But then I sit there and I'm like, okay, but then the product experience, I see how people are reacting. So I guess like with those two things in mind, or any other direction you want to take it, you said you learned some things. What did you learn, and how would you approach it differently if given another swing and you're like, okay, I have a time machine, I knew what happened, I can go back?
I think it's mostly just being super ahead of comms. Like we tried to talk about it with people in the Discord beforehand. We had a thread in Discord and it was out there and people gave us feedback on these changes and we talked about them, and it wasn't 3 people, it was like 10 or 15 people that we talked to about it. And we got some input on it. We did that twice actually, but it was, you know, buried in Discord. So the vast majority of people, the 90% of people that, you know, are more casual in terms of their participation, they never saw any of these things. We had the idea originally of like, would we ease the change in as opposed to making it a steep cliff where like all of a sudden you logged in and your score was down and you're like, would you rather die tomorrow or bleed out over 2 weeks? And people give us the feedback they'd rather die tomorrow, basically. And you're like, oh God, okay, well, let's see how it goes. And I think, yeah, in hindsight, and we made this adjustment on Saturday, right? It was like, okay, we'll commit to doing a public snapshot where people can vote on it. We'll have a discussion on Ethos about any changes that we have going forward. And then we'll just be super upfront, like, hey, these are the changes we intend to make. We'll give it time to kind of like soak out there for people to understand it, and an opportunity for people to discuss it, and in no way kind of like basically just make sure that is everywhere for people to consume. So that can't be the objection that people have. And I think that was the number one objection, was like, hey, I didn't know this was coming. the thing that I would preface that with is like, I think even if we would have told everyone ahead of time, they still would have been upset by it probably. And this is where we get into the tension of like you and your perspective on your own score versus the protocol and what's best for the protocol. And that's really hard to tease out for us.
Yeah, that's a difficult balance that you strike there. And to your point, you almost just described the purpose of proactive PR. It's like when I worked in PR at like Progressive and I was leading the PR department there, I would have relationships with reporters. I would tell them what was coming down the pike. We'd have discussions. And then if shit hit the fan, all these reporters who people got the news from would say like, look, we knew this was coming and here's why it makes sense. And it almost softens the blow when people say those people whose opinions you trust are already saying like, look, not only is this coming, but after it comes, if people aren't expecting it, it's like, hey, trust me, like this is the right move. So I think it's a really good learning from it because I think that part is probably you can't stop improving the product with more data, but you can hopefully soften that situation to make people understand it more, which I appreciate that reflection on it. So I think that's smart. The thing I would ask, a couple things I would ask. I think number one, you mentioned very specifically that the upvoting was something that people were farming. Which clever move. I didn't think about it. I'm a terrible farmer. I'm not good at gaming systems. Do you worry about this having the impact, or is there going to be an edit to sort of that daily task that you do on the side? Because that's a large part of it. And it's like, okay, so why do I do this if it doesn't even truly matter and people are not going to see this and it's not going to affect things? So curious your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, right? If we lean too much into people farming the protocol, then you get bad data. And what I recognize happened through that is we did have some good data. There were people that came in and they supported each other and they were upvoting each other's stuff. That's still good, right? Like it doesn't mean that it's bad data by any means. But if you get to the point where it's being explicitly farmed, and you saw some of the DMs that people screenshotted later of people being like, oh, good, I'll pay you to like write a review for me or an invite or whatever, then it muddies things. And this is like the constant problem if you're building a product like we are with content and quality, where you're fighting against people who are just trying to attack it from the quantity side, basically. Either like I'm Sybil farming, I'm just trying to get whatever I can out of this. And that's not good for the protocol, right? So we are risking now product quality of like, well, people come back in and contribute every day. On the other hand, it's a tough one because I don't really expect everyone to contribute every day. If I'm being totally honest, I think Ethos will follow the same kind of guidelines that every website will, where you have 1% of people that contribute, 9% of people that are like passive contributors. They sometimes they log in and they upvote stuff or they comment, but it's much less regular. And 90% of the audience is just viewing things and getting value from, it's in my Twitter. I can see those scores now. We were on the 60% of the people that were using it every day side. And I don't expect it to settle there because I think we are starting to create that value and it becomes more obvious that you run out of stuff to contribute on too. So hopefully that all kind of made sense.
It does make sense. I just keeping it real. It was very much a demotivator for me personally. I had a 10-day plus streak going. I was logging in there, and then one day I logged in and my score was like, it was a big cut. And I lost the motivation to do it. So I was one of those, I was a daily active user. Since I saw the score cut, I've done it a few times, but I've absolutely lost the streak. Like it was a big motivation blow for me to be one of those daily active users, mainly because in the back of my head, I'm like, well, why am I going to grind this daily if, I grow the score up and then another month I get my score whacked again. Like I'm just, I feel like I might get the same reward if I just, to your point, I just become a viewer. And I like the extension on X. It's spot on. Like the people who are scammers and grifters, they're all red. Like that part you guys nailed as far as like driving that daily activity, the slashing of scores. It was personally a big demotivator for me.
Yeah, I get it. And I think that again, it's such a tough balance because you're like, well, like I mean this in like the most authentic way possible. Like that is the selfish view, right? Which you should act in the best self-interest, right? Like you care about your score. You don't give a shit about kind of care about other people's score, but really you care about yours. And so this is the balance that we have to have is like most people, almost everyone are going to operate in their best self-interest in the equation, right? But the reality is you didn't actually get slashed. Everyone got slashed, right? Like the reality is you got graded against a curve. And so like, yeah, like the progression or the perceived progression is something that took a step back.
And I understand that. If you reflect on it now, is there anything you would have done differently before slashing, like as far as comms or
yeah, I mean, this is where I said, like, I think we already even have our first like improvement proposal, which is another tweak to the score, and it's out there for discussion. It's people will vote on it. Like, we'll talk about it. It's not pure governance, because if we went pure governance route, I don't think we'd get anything done, but it's, collecting feedback and getting people's input and giving them a heads up. I think that will change things, but like, it's going to be tough. Like the score, it's not going to be right for a while. Like, and this is where we have this tension that Steve's been continuing to highlight, which is fair, of like, yeah, how do you manage like protocol expectations versus product experience expectations?
Can I like, so on that, because I love, like I said, like, because to me it's like, and I think you get this vibe. I'm a person who just like likes watching tech unfold and likes novel uses of it. So like when I critique, it's always like, how do I critique not FUD? How do I look at it as like, what is the thing that would make this thing sing and be awesome that everyone's going to use it so it makes the most sense? And I think in this instance, a question about like a product thing, I don't even know what this looks like, but I think it would be a really cool task. Have you considered a way to somehow verify on-chain credentials? It's probably hard to do at scale. It's probably easier to do in an early beta. Like, and I'll give an example, and this will be a selfish example, like you said, talking about your own score. I've written a Harvard Business Review article about NFTs, the first one, and has been cited, I think, like at last I saw, it's like 137 times across academic resources. That's probably a sign of credibility, but there's no way to theoretically verify that sort of thing. We were talking about my book this morning. It's endorsed by Nobel Prize winners. It's like, have you considered or thought about it? And I'm not just trying to be like, break my arm, patting myself on the back. I'm using an example I know about. Like, have you considered a way to get like credentials on top of the review system to layer in that extra layer? And I imagine that's really difficult.
I mean, definitely. Just to be clear, that what you were talking about earlier with writing something that got cited, isn't there an algorithm for that people look at, of like how many times has a publication or research?
Yeah, there's a website that tracks it. That's the only reason I know the exact number. And I actually didn't know that until recently.
That builds your credibility in the research space though. And like, so people are doing the exact same thing we are, but on like research data. But yeah, I mean, we definitely could. Like, there are definitely plenty of things that we could do, and we don't even have to build it. It's like people have already built a lot of this stuff. You've got things like Gitcoin Passport, which allow you to, apply some credentials to yourself, not the exact ones you said. People have tried to build attestation services that say like, hey, I've done this thing and these other people agree. It's really a tough one, because like, if you take a step back, and there's kind of two problems to be solved. One is like, you want to be able to call out bad people, right? And we talked about, I think we're doing that well. The second one, there's three problems really. The second one is like, you want to be able to separate signal from noise, which is like real people from bots, or real people from like fake accounts that no one's willing to review. And the third problem is highlighting reputable people well. And I don't think we're doing the highlighting reputable people well job at all. I think we are doing the other two jobs pretty well. I think we actually do separate noise from signal. Like, you go look on the timeline and you're like, that person doesn't have a review. It's not perfect, but we're getting there. I think it's really challenging to understand on my side right now, what does that mean if you have a publication out there that's been cited a bunch of times, or some sort of credentials outside of it? It does mean that you could be separated signal from noise, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that you are a good person or that you are reputable in the space. Like, in fact, if we look back, we may have even talked about this, like the doxed people in Web3 tend to be the ones that actually, they flex those credentials, they abuse those credentials, and they make a bunch of money and leave the space forever. And so like, it's tough, because I do think that you are more credible because of those things. I don't know for sure that should be applied to your credibility score or not. But I could be sold on that for sure. I think that's what most people are feeling right now, is the like, oh, it's early into Ethos, and there are tons of people on there that are like, what the hell? I'm a reputable person and I'm not reputable on the site.
Yeah, that's a really good point, as far as like, a lot of people come in and they say, look, they use their they leverage their credibility to do something that is not credible, and that bears it out. So it's a very tough task, I think, to go in, is like, what do you deem as being important? And then again, the issue you run into is, it has to be almost an update of multiple things. Because if you just did one individual thing, then some people's scores go up, some people's scores go down, and people are going to be pissed off about it. I think it's a fair point. Have you considered, again, like this is just like product things, because I find it so fascinating. Have you considered like levels of categorization where like you almost can use certain things to categorize someone into just like, because right now the score is very binary. It's like it's like, you know, you're credible, you're reputable, you're neutral, or you're not. Is there a way that you can actually add a depth of data to categorize people within certain categories? Or is your interest in saying like, you know what, I want to keep it closer to a Google review or a Yelp where you're just a certain amount of stars?
No, we definitely think about this. It just wouldn't be based on user input, explicit user input. I think one of the worst things we could do is say like the LinkedIn style, like, hey, you're referring someone for these skills, and then it like muddies the review in a lot of ways, and it just gets kind of gross. Like, I think he's a good alpha caller. I think he's a good person. Like, you're like, oh, I don't want to think about that. I just want to write a review. So the way that we think about that is we would just use the AI and look at use an LLM that basically looks at all of the data. We would look at you as your profile and all the reviews you have, and what are the common things that match to our like categorization of 25 categories in the space: podcast host, alpha caller, degen, ideologist. Like we could have it mapped to those things. And I would think that would actually do a pretty good job of kind of helping describe stuff. Again, it's kind of, you were kind of implying more of the explicit, like, hey, I'm reviewing this person and saying they're good at alpha calling. It's just hard to do that on a UX side. Like almost every platform ever avoids having anything other than upvoting, downvoting. The second you introduce the idea of like a little bit more complexity, it typically like dilutes the value or the quality of what you're writing. Does that make sense?
It does. It's like almost like, how do you know, like on one hand, you could word cloud the reviews and try to find the common theme. And then on the other hand, you could find someone, and you don't want self-selected categorization. Yeah. Like you've chosen a relatively challenging job here in what you're creating, because I think like a lot of times, and this is one of the reasons I'm glad you came on, because I think like a lot of times it's like, you know, everybody thinks it's so simple. And then they, like, for example, like you have the credential example, and you had a very logical response of, well, that those credentials often don't lead to credibility. So it's like, you know, those sort of moments of like, you've considered it and you've thought way more deeply about it than I have is something that I think is important. Is the couple more things, then we'll let you get out of here, but I appreciate you jumping on, especially clarifying the updates for people so they know and kind of like getting into your brain. Because like I said, just to reiterate what I said there, I think one of the challenges I always run into with people, with founders, is founders have usually thought through all of the things that you were worried about, and then some. Not that you can't get new information and feedback, but like you've thought about these things and gone deep on them, and somebody at a surface level is like, this should work. You're like, well, here's why it might not. So I appreciate that. Is the like in the most positive and negative outcome of Ethos, I'm curious, like as a company, is it like the most negative, it's just not seen as relevant data, and the more positive outcome is it seen as relevant data for companies and people who are looking into the space and individuals? Like, what do you see as like the most positive, or are there positive or negative outcomes they haven't thought about on your utopian or dystopian scenario for the platform?
I mean, the most negative is what I felt like we were going towards with the old scoring algorithm, to be honest. It was the idea that people that were farming were being recognized and rewarded as reputable, and people that didn't have the credentials were kind of somewhere in the middle. Sometimes they were reputable, but it was pretty obvious that it was getting farmed. And that sucks for us, because then one, people look at the leaderboard, they look at like who is credible, and they're like, that guy's not fucking credible. Are you kidding me? Like, they immediately turn you off from Ethos, right? It's an interesting balance. You're like, well, you got that on one side, then you've got piss off all of your customers on the other side, right? And then the other thing would be like, well, if this data is not accurate, then it's meaningless. If I can't go to other teams and say, hey, here are the 100, what consensus says most reputable people in the space are, then I can't go secure value for the current users. I can't go confidently say to an on-chain credit company that these people are less likely to like do something stupid. And so that's why like we're constantly fighting that, in my opinion. But the upside is, I mean, your Ethos score is your credit score. It's a social credit score, right? It goes with you everywhere and everything that you do. It's something that people decide which podcasts to listen to in the morning or which space to tune into, because, you guys have the best reviews and the best vouchers, and you're the most reputable in the space, and you don't shill stuff, and people like that you have unbiased takes and stuff like that. Like, we want people to be able to make more informed decisions, and then it's because basically Ethos is all around you without you even knowing it. And I think that is like a really interesting nuance of what happened over the weekend. Is like, we built an effort to prevent the crazy downside, but it's risking the crazy upside in a way. And the most interesting thing to me is like, even if you quit on doing the daily tasks on Ethos, or even if you're like, I'm vouching everyone and not interested, like, in theory, that score's still there. Like, it hasn't left, and it still is meaningful to other people. And it's this concept of like, humans act selfish in a lot of ways. And again, I'm saying that in like the nicest way possible. Like, we do care about self-interest most. But when they don't think about the fact that, like, one, when you're on Ethos, you're helping other people in theory. And two, like, this is other people evaluating you now. You don't really get a say in your own evaluation. It's a very mind bend of like how to think about things. And so anyways, I know I answered more than what your actual question was, but just riffing a little bit.
No, I like the thought process, because I think what it shows, and Joey, I see your hand up. I'll get to you in a second here to ask a question. I think what it shows, and one of the things that my observation was, and this is sort of the range of emotions I had, because your point, and you're using selfish in the clinical term, so people understand, like, not in like the you're an asshole and you're selfish,
exactly.
Like, you think in own self-interest terms, which I think is the right way to think of it, right? And it's like, you know, my reaction initially was like you would see, like, fuck, my score went down. Is this an error? What happened? Shit, does this mean I'm less credible? I don't like this. Did this only affect me? Learned it affected other people, understood it a little more, and then said, okay, like, the goal here is to build the best possible product. And it's that may be independent of, and it is, like Cap said, it could be demotivating because you see it and your own feeling is that way, right?
Totally.
But the goal is best possible product, right? And that's sort of like when my sniff test on founders is, are you extracting? Are you full of shit? Or are you trying to build a good product? And I actually tend to get more bullish when people do something that maybe is an unpopular decision, but is maybe getting the best possible product out of it. And so I think that that's important. So I do appreciate it. And I got that from that answer. I want to go to Joey. I see Joey's hand up. I want you to get your question in, because I'm sure you have Joey, go ahead and jump in here.
Yeah. So it was talked about briefly earlier. By the way, thank you for coming on. And this is something that like we've talked about in the war room, and Cap has talked about. And as somebody who owned like a small business, like I'm very familiar with, you know, Google reviews. And we often talk about like, you know, how you mentioned it earlier about how somebody might be incentivizing their community with money, right? Like, hey, everybody that goes and upvotes me, I'm going to give them, you know, a half a soul, right? And then everyone goes and upvotes somebody on Ethos, right? Like we do this in our restaurants where it's like, hey, write a Google review, get a free appetizer, right? Like all these things that you do, like that we do in Web 2 can easily be then done in Web 3, but because it's anonymous and whatever, you can. So my question, to piggyback off of something you answered, because you kind of brought it up earlier, is like, how do you fairly evaluate and prevent like review bombings, both positive and negative? How do you fairly prevent somebody from starting a private chat and asking, 50 or 100 of their followers to go give them a good review?
He's basically saying don't become friend tech, I think is what I'm hearing.
No, it is a really good question. And I mean, I kind of talked about this in the fact that like we don't prevent it, to be clear. Like anyone can write a review to the protocol if you have a profile. So there's no preventing it. There's only changing the weighting. And like the way to think about Ethos at a deeper level is like everything is a node on a network with weighting. And if you get attacked from 150 people that all have very low weighting, then it basically has no impact to your score. That is one thing that I think we've gotten right in the algorithm so far. And I've seen it happen a couple times where, a bunch of neutral like level people review someone and have basically very little impact on their score. The other side of that is like, I always think about risk when it comes to Ethos, and there always has to be risk whenever you write a review or when you vouch for someone. And to me, I think that the risk of participating in mob mentality or getting paid off to like go take someone's kneecaps out, like you did that on chain, like cool, like now people can go see that. And the risk isn't necessarily that, yeah, it might suck for the other person that gets their kneecaps taken out. There could be people that come and defend that person too, just as equally, you know, vouch for them, write positive reviews that counterbalance them. This is the point of consensus in a lot of ways. But I think at the end of the day, participating in mob mentality is something that I think the network will view as net negative, and people will identify like, hey, you like mobbed on this person and you've done this like a few times now, like you might not be, you know, a really quality add to the ecosystem, the social layer overall. And so I know that's not the best answer of like, hey, we're defending against this. I'm basically saying like society is going to do things that society is going to do. We can help weight against it to ensure that like the people aren't completely impacted in really negative ways, but really those people are now putting risk behind it. It's not, I wrote a tweet and I deleted it 3 days later. It's like, I put something on chain that said I didn't like this person. And I'd like to think that will end up being a better defense than it is now.
Yeah, I think that that's a good way of putting it. I think it's like like you see this in the past where it's like people join a mob mentality that ends up being wrong. And then down the line, people say, but weren't you the same person doing this? And I think that that does matter. And now putting that on chain absolutely matters. And again, people can go back and correct things and that's what it does. But it's like, it's almost creating an on-chain record of that, which I think is like, look, I'm creating an on-chain record of the moment in time right now where, you know, B-Check and Legendary and those guys, like those are my friends. I trust them. I think they're super credible. I'm leaving and I'm vouching. That's there forever. And if they were to go and say, we're selling a modern market thing and we're rugging it, then, which they wouldn't, they're awesome. But like, that's, you know, that's going to be on me for my lack of judgment in that moment. So I think it's, and to your point, I have yet to leave a negative review. That's just not, I haven't. Like, and I think there's probably a lot of people who are more hesitant about that. Other people absolutely love that shit, I noticed. But like, I've been a little bit more on the side of that. I will say there are places where I have not left a positive review, where I have like, maybe not a negative thing to say, but not a positive thing to say or a vibe in some sort of way. And so I think it does play out that I probably think more twice about it. I mean, I'm not going to give examples of the past. There are people who gave me bad juju, who didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, I got bad juju. Cool. Like I can talk to them. I can interact with them. But when I go on the platform, I'm not, now I think twice about doing it because it's there forever. Does that make sense?
That's the risk that we're trying to highlight, is like, and you know, it's funny you say that, because I used to think that one of our answers for like the fact that people won't say negative things is that more will be said by saying nothing at all. And if like you guys didn't review each other on Ethos, I'd be like, I wonder, like, is there some tension there? Like Steve and Cap don't really like each other, or you like go remove one of your reviews or something. Like, and again, it's not the best signal, but my job, or our job as a team, to just kind of round out that question, is like, we need to make that as observable as possible, right? We need to make it where like I know you probably wouldn't want this, Steve, but like, hey, you follow these 1,400 people on Twitter. You've left reviews for these people. These are other credible people. They left reviews for you and you didn't leave a review back, kind of thing, right? And like, you don't have to say anything. You literally don't have to say anything. And I wouldn't want to put you in a situation where like people are like, what the hell, man? Why aren't you writing me a review back? But we need to highlight that information, because that is signal too. There's signal in no signal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually honestly think I would even argue, and that's one of my favorite things that you said actually so far, because I would argue, until we were talking about it and really working it out, I would argue that is probably the highest signal from oftentimes someone like me. And that's not to say if somebody's reviewed me, I haven't reviewed you back. No shade. I'm not saying that's the case.
Yeah, right.
But there are people who I've interacted with who I don't
wouldn't go to bat for.
And I wouldn't. And like, I am more likely, not that I'm being disingenuous, but I'm more likely to interact with them on the timeline that people might say, oh, well, those people must be friends. They're interacting on the timeline. But that's just a tweet. That's a reply. That's not like a vouch. This is a vouch. So Yeah, I think that's I think that's.
I'm not replying. I'm not giving reviews back because my score got nerfed. So blame if you're unhappy that I haven't got back to you on your review yet. Blame Serpin.
Cap is using an excuse. He is a lazy sack of shit when it comes to reviews. I am just going to put it out there. In fact, I'm going to give you a negative review. Review. Cap is a lazy sack of shit when it comes to reviews. That's going to be your
all my reviews got deprioritized when my score got slashed. It's fault. I haven't removed them from my list. They're still there, just deprioritized. That's all.
It's a great excuse.
Totally fair.
I'm waiting to see if he nerfs the score again, and then I'll.
Well, that's what we could talk about, right? Is like we made another score proposal. Everyone's like so fixated on the last one. You're like, there's another one coming. We should talk about it, right? That's the whole point. And actually, the one that's coming up right now that's up for discussion is it's a boost for the vast majority of people. It actually reduces the mutual vouch bonus of people that are vouching for each other, and it increases the impact of reviews. And so, again, it's really easy for us to get fixated on like, well, yeah, we made a change and we didn't communicate that well, and we had an opportunity to go fix it. We tried to adapt the next day with our new way to propose things, and now we have a proposal out there. And the problem is well, if you lost some people, they'll never come back, so who cares? We're screwed. Those people aren't going to be interested, and they're not going to vote, and they're never going to talk about it. But again, we're trying to put our best foot forward by being like, yeah, it's going to change. Again, so long as everyone mostly agrees. And I think it'll change for the better for most people. Most people's scores will go up. So it's definitely not a correction, though. It's not like a 200-point increase. It's an adaptation that basically makes when someone that has a lot of credibility reviews someone that doesn't, that increases the review impact.
Yeah, well, and if the change you make is we decided upvotes on reviews are very positive, I am going to give you a negative review on that basis.
I should get that. That was the thing that I was like, damn it! I totally get the FUD on Twitter, but write me a negative review. If you don't, or go buy my distrust on my market or something, right? Give a signal out there. Don't just put it on Twitter. It's boring. Go actually put your author it, right? Put it on chain. If you really think that we fucked up and that you don't like Ethos anymore, you don't like me anymore, go put your name behind it, right? I don't know. That's the one thing that you're like, God, I want to get to that. And it's not just me, and it's not just this instance. It's in every instance, right? If Polymarket screwed up a couple weeks ago with the UMA resolution, they got slashed. Slash me. This is the point. And so I was kind of disappointed with that. Cap, if you want to write your first negative review, or either of you guys want to write your first negative review, Cap's just his first review in general. Go ahead and leave it for me.
I love that. No, I appreciate the thinking on that. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the updates. And I appreciate the sort of mentality around trying to grow in a way where you're like, look, what can we learn from this? What do we like? But not apologizing for trying to create the product. I think that is the right way to go about it, for
100%. Because if you just build a product to satisfy CT, I think that's probably about the quickest way to lead to your demise. You're never going to make all of CT happy. And if you build to solve for that, if you build it to satisfy CT, it's probably
farmers.
Yeah, you're just going to guarantee a short-lived product that you'll lose them as soon as the new shiny thing drops.
It's tough, but I would like to think that our best statement of we're here for the long term is by shunning people that were farming the protocol, basically, right? Yep.
It's a fine ground, right? Because there's people myself and Steve who are not farming.
Totally,
we actually
enjoy
interested. We think it's a good product, or I speak for myself. I'm a sucker for daily activity. Give me a daily gamified thing I need to do. I'll most often do it if it's something that I think there's value in the platform long term.
Right.
I'm not going to do it if this is going to be gone in 60 days. I won't usually waste my time. So I think there's that fine balance of keeping people like us who are not going to farm it, but we'll use it every day if we think it's going to be there.
That's where I would summarize it of we tried to kill the farming and we took everyone out at the same time, right? And you're like, damn it, we got rid of the things the behavior, the boosts that people had that they were farming, but we can't just there's no oh, well, you got to this level, we're never changing your score again. No, the score goes across everyone. That's the only way that it's fair. And so I would say that is the biggest self-inflicted wound is we went to take out farmers and we took out real authentic people that are not there to farm. They just care about their score. They just want to use the product. And That was definitely the biggest miss. And again, that's where we're like, okay, well, how do you go solve that going forward? Like, it's still going to be tough. It's still going to be hard if we have to go implement something that nerfs people again. But we have to be better about figuring out how to vocalize that early, talk about it often, introduce the change maybe over time, just like make sure everyone's along for the ride.
Awesome. Let's let we one more question in here, and then we'll let you jump. Although our 10 o'clock segment or 9:30 thing actually ended up having to jump, but like Salamander on stage, go ahead and get in here. GM
guys. Damn it, am I late?
Late for what?
For this show. I feel like I was like popping in, you guys. I saw the topic and I'm like, damn, I'm in here. Because I made a couple fun posts the other day. That's why. Literally about this. I said Ethos, these nuts. But that's how it is. But I love this conversation. Can I add to what I feel about Ethos?
You can. I should add the title on X, Ethos FUD with founder, is only because Serpin leans into the roast.
Oh yeah.
If I didn't know he was
actually.
Yeah, if I didn't know he was embracing of FUD and critical feedback, I wouldn't have. I'm not taking shots at him, so don't take that the wrong way. But no, I know he actually does. I respect it greatly that a founder wants the constructive feedback, wants to know where they could, what's broken, what's wrong. Don't just, like he said, don't just tweet about it and not let him see it. Like, come tell him to his face. So yeah, I wanted to clarify that, but appreciate you jumping up, Salamander. What do you want to FUD Serpin for this morning?
No, I actually, so one thing I want to say, I think it's a cool idea. Like, there's two sides to it, right? Like, I think that people really liked the Yaps protocol because people are there's no, like, people are just tweeting, right? Everyone tweets every day. Like, doesn't even matter about your account size. I mean, it does at the end if you guys want to get rewards. Ethos is a little differently because I do like the idea where people are, there is, in 2025, it's different than 2021. Everyone was like literally hardcore scammers, right? Now everyone's just actually trying to build, most people are trying to build stuff. And I kind of wonder if we kind of just need to make it more fun, realistically. Like, Yaps was kind of like this degenerate, like, you see it on the timeline, people are yapping, and like, it was just degenerate. It was kind of fun, right? I just think that's the only thing that's really missing, because I do like the ethos of like, giving people a good review. There's obviously people that are scammers that got bad reviews, and like, thank the Lord for that. But I wonder if it just needs to be like more degenerate on the timeline, and how do we kind of like create kind of more of an interaction between communities, right? People like, if it's like for example, everyone's giving good reviews on solid founders, right? Like, what is a category towards solid founders? What is a category between community builders and community managers, or whatever it is, right? And I think it's just like, if we do something like that, I'm looking at the outside of this, right? Like, Web 2, imagine they want to come into Web 3 and they're just like, I want to know who is legit, right? Why is this category legit? Like, what are they doing? Why is this influencer great? Are they just shit posting, or are they actually making like good content and doing their research, right? So I just think it just needs to be a little bit more structured. But I don't have an invite yet, but that's okay. It's just the only thing, really.
We can figure something out to help you out with that. What I would say is, like, I agree. I think when you talk about it being more fun, I think of the daily tasks are reasonably fun. I think it can be a little hard sometimes. You don't know who the hell is getting reviewed, and you're upvoting and downvoting random stuff. But the daily task is actually something I want to lean into more, not because it's daily, but because it's like simple social signal that we're gathering every day. That's valuable, right? That's valuable data, and it's a little bit less ignorant. You don't really care as much about the score when you're doing those things. You're just kind of like, yeah, cool, I'm learning something, and upvoting and downvoting stuff. What was the other part of what I was gonna say there? Now it's completely escaped me. But optimizing for fun is a tough one too, because you're like, well, we're trying to build the protocol that has the best data. And like, I think Yaps were really fun and interesting, but now what my observation on the timeline is that like, people farming Yaps a little bit too explicitly leads to like a little bit of like rewarding chaos and negativity. So it's a really interesting balance. Man, what else? You brought something else up in the second part of your statement, and I completely forgot it.
I was saying that, like, I'm kind of looking at,
you're talking about structure.
Like, categories of people, right?
Yeah.
The homies, all my founder friends, and I love seeing their feedback. Like, great founder, good communication, great leader. And I wish that was like categorized, just because like I want to connect with more marketing community
right.
managers,
So yeah, that's something we were kind of talking about earlier on the show too, of like, how do we look at what people say about reviews and then try to start to categorize that information for them? We could explicitly ask users up front, but I found that that's not the best UI UX generally. So we have some plans around that to better categorize accounts and just get like, what does consensus generally say about this person? Are they a degen? Are they typically a founder? Are they a community manager? And I think on the flip side of that, where I think it will get really interesting, something I was working on literally last night, is we're going to have different leaderboards for different types of accounts. And so right now, one of the pieces of feedback is like, what the hell? You had this like global like credibility score. People look at it and they're like, who? I don't even know who the people are at the top of the leaderboard. Well, like imagine if you could go look at like a ranking list of like VCs in the space and like how people view them. What if you could look at founders and there's a founder leaderboard? Or what if you could look at protocols? Or maybe it's like upcoming projects. Who's supporting what upcoming project that hasn't been released yet? And why do they support it? I think that type of categorization will help too, where it's kind of like we're kind of categorizing the categories and then allowing people to rank them based on their scores. So hopefully, I think we're taking a step in that direction to just like kind of build it out, make it a little bit more fun, and also just kind of help with the structure of the data overall. Because right now it's still like Wild West a little bit with Ethos. You're like, I don't know, how do I find stuff? I have no idea how to find most of the things, and we don't put a lot of like stuff in your face and say like, hey, this is a good person, you should go review or stuff like that.
I like that. It's like adding more context to the reviews and to the individuals, I think is really good. So it seems like if I'm reading between the lines, it kind of like, or not even between the lines, you're saying it like contextually, you want to add more context. And this is actually this is going to sound like a weird use case, but like for me, it's actually really good to know what people know me for. And not that I'm like well known. I'm not like, oh, but it's like what people associate with me is a better way of putting it, because one, that could be like, oh, okay, like, well, that means I should do X differently, or B, I went 1B, 1 or 2, I could actually like just say like, hey, I'm gonna like, I should lean more into because a lot of people talk about educational. I'm like, I should lean more into that. That's what gives me passion. That's what people enjoy from me that I put out into the wild. So I think there's like some data for the actual users, but I also think your point about giving more contextualized data is really like, that seems like the next phase down the line of like, you get way more context to things. So I think that's awesome.
I think people forget that like we just launched the product, right? And we took the like complete opposite approach of like, we're not hyping this shit up. Like just get it out there and get people to use it, get people to talk about it. And we've successfully hit our first like, oh, people are interested. Like, oh, people like have their first major objection with why this won't work. And then I think it'll stable out. I would like to think we're at maybe the bottom of the first in terms of like what we actually plan to build and where we are. And
ahead of the tariffs.
Yeah, there you go. Totally. And this is the beauty of being a builder, is I kind of tune some of that stuff out sometimes. Like oh, whatever, it'll be fine.
This is like the truest thing of being a builder at all. I didn't have one thought of tariffs this morning until like 30 seconds before the show. I happened to glance at the war room, like, oh shit, we're gonna talk tariffs this morning, aren't we?
You know what's funny? It's like today, I saw the tariff news and it was like Canada and Mexico exempt, and I'm like, today is the only day I'm happy to be Canadian. Like just one day out of my 28 years, you know?
Yeah, it's I appreciate the perspective. I mean, Cap saw that I was being a little emo about it in the war room, so he knew we were going to have a discussion about it. But I was look, I mean, it's
I can't even make this up. I haven't even got to this yet, Steve. The real discussion, what fired me up this morning, was not tariffs. You want to know what the real discussion got fired up in my friend group was? It was I had 100x playing baseball last night on Underdog, and then this morning I wake up to this nonsense that one of my close in real life friends is calling the greatest of all time, not LeBron James, but Jokic. This guy thinks Joker, who has got one ring, is the greatest of all time, and that's what got me spicy this morning. If you really got to know, I truly could care less about tariffs. I was straw man on the other side. I don't care. It's not changing how I'm going to go about my day to day. I think changes will happen, but what got the blood flowing was the conversation about
the important stuff. Yeah, the important stuff.
And he followed up the Joker as the greatest of all time, is that Dan Marino should be in the conversation of greatest all-time quarterback. So like, this is, my world was just, I came in like I may as well eaten a couple jalapenos this morning.
Cap's friend gets slashed on the market. That's my take on this. But Look, Serpin, I appreciate you sticking around. I gave Serpin an invite from like 9:45 to 9:15, but the conversation was really flowing. So I appreciate you sticking with us on all this. Like I said, I truly enjoy the product. Whenever I ask questions, I always try to put them in a place of like, hey, where's this going? Good. And I love what you're building. So yeah, looking forward to it. I may even bug you about comms at some point, just because like I think there's that's an area where I have expertise and I really want to see y'all succeed. So thanks for jumping on, and yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have you back on again, but thanks for jumping on short notice and jumping through the chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Right on. All right, we'll see you. Cap, good discussion. I mean, I like initially, I said it before, like, I think it's important to be intellectually honest that I reacted poorly at first. Then I moved into the direction, and like, yeah, I appreciate Serpin, by the way. Like, yeah, for people who don't know, like, you want to give a good review. 25 minutes longer than I had scheduled him for. But like, I just think there were so many good questions and he had a lot to say. And I think one of my takeaways, Cap, and I'm curious your take on this, not just on this in general, but as a like thing about builders. One of the things that I always tell people is they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes and they miss the plot on that.
One of the things behind the scenes, by the way, is an all caps request asking us to go back to tariffs.
Oh, because I think Dort's upset that you're talking about he doesn't want to get into NBA discussion. I'm a big Joker fan, by the way. I think he's got a little bit of ways to go.
He's put together one of the greatest 3-year runs, an offensive display in history. That doesn't make him the greatest basketball player of all time. It's an incredible offensive run, just like when Curry was at his peak. People were saying, "Oh, he's the greatest of all time." Like, no, he's had one of the greatest 3-year runs of all time for an offensive player, but he's a liability on defense, just like Joker is. Like, it's just. If Joker plays for another 10 years and is this dominant and wins, I don't know, 4 or 5 more rings, then it's a real discussion. But right now, it's premature.
Yeah, I think with Jokic, it's like he's actually got this thing where he doesn't have to be a liability on defense. Like in the playoffs, he tends to be a little bit better, but it's like, on the regular season when he's winning MVP.
That's why he's not going to be there. He doesn't have that competitive. He doesn't even like basketball, it seems. Like I think there's almost zero chance that he plays till he's in his 40s and actually cares enough to win multiple more titles. He's good. He could get there, but whereas like MJ and Kobe, like you couldn't question their competitive fire and how their love for the game. It's like the polar opposite. Which
they cared versus like,
and he doesn't even care. Like imagine if the guy actually cared, he might be in discussion, but you got to win at least 2 rings before you're even in that conversation.
He had like a triple double with like 20 rebounds and 20 assists. And Scott Van Pelt like asked him something like, "Hey, like I know that like, and hey, I know that you had a like you're not one to like, celebrate accomplishments, but that's pretty cool." And he was just like, just another game. I didn't even realize I was doing it. It's like
the problem with the NBA right now. None of the players care about individual milestones. They all take their days off. And, it's just that I really do believe that's part of what the biggest problem with the NBA is there's no personal glory anymore. It's like people care, fans care. They want,
or even team glory. Very few even care about winning titles anymore, which is what's crazy. Yeah. It's like in the NFL, guys either secure a huge contract, which they should in a place they are because they have short careers, or they oftentimes look for somewhere to win or want to look for a win. Like Myles Garrett requests had 2 things that could happen. 1, the Browns are going to trade him, or 2, they're going to make him the highest paid player in the NFL, or like whatever he was, second highest paid player in the NFL, whatever it was, like highest non-quarterback, like those. But in the NBA, it's like, I don't know. Like I have a whole different perspective on NBA players, the NBA season. That's
Michael Jordan played 82 games and averaged 37 minutes as a 40-year-old. Imagine someone in today's NBA, not even a 40-year-old. Imagine anyone doing that. Like it's just like the love of the game and the desire to just compete night in and night out. That's part of what made the NBA so great. It doesn't matter if they were playing against plumbers and electricians back then. Like that was if you paid, especially the money you pay to go to an NBA game today, like you want to see the stars. They shouldn't be taking nights off. Like
the hard part about it is like, and I'm not just saying this to like, I'm not trying to ignite this debate. The reason I give someone like LeBron a pass on that is LeBron did all the individual glory things and still has all the numbers and stuff. But then when people said,
if you want to talk about a current player that's on par with Jordan, then you go the LeBron route. At least you have an argument there. At least it's a debate because the guy is playing into his 40s. The guy has won multiple rings. Like those things, like you can say this is the greatest offensive player, the greatest athlete of all time. Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson's the greatest athletic quarterback of all time. That's a real argument, but you can't say they're the greatest quarterback of all time. We've got to witness Tom Brady. The guy, despite not being the greatest athlete, he became the greatest quarterback of all time. Like it's just rings do matter in the greatest of all time conversation. I I really struggled trying to have that conversation with someone who's never won a ring or has one title. Like, these are team sports. Championships matter. They should matter.
In basketball, it does. In basketball, I think there's a threshold, and then you could have other discussions. Like I said, like, and I'm not just saying this is a LeBron thing. I think that there are a lot of factors.
Yeah, you don't need to win 10 titles. Like, it doesn't, just because Bill Russell has doesn't mean he's the greatest of all
Robert
time.
Ory's not the GOAT, right? It's like, but it
matters. Like, you can't be the greatest of all time and not having ever won a championship or only won it once. Like, that stuff is, that to me, it's like a disqualifier.
Right. Like,
because Jordan didn't always have the best teams. LeBron didn't always have the best teams. Tom Brady didn't always have the best teams. Like, they won with, they weren't the greatest athletes. They weren't the greatest teams, and they still won because they were great.
That's why Tom Brady, to me, is like arguably the greatest athlete ever, even though he's not athletically the greatest athlete ever. It's like, he never had the best teams. They constantly were getting rid of his best players. Like, they would cut them a year before they were, that's what the Patriots were good for. They would cut good players or trade them. They'd be like, what are you doing here? It's like, so people are quick to forget how good Brady was, by the way. It pisses me off that immediately it's like people forget how good Brady was in like the things. He had like 3 Hall of Fame careers. But on a side note, or kind of like putting the train back on the tracks, I know we hit the ethos thing. I was going to say, like, I think people miss the behind the scenes stuff where, again, on a macro level, I'll hand it to you, then I gotta do a mobile stream drop. I think that there is this issue with people criticize on the timeline oftentimes and don't realize, like, it's actually, to make the sports analogy, it's the, hey, why doesn't LeBron just pass more or something like that? Like, or why doesn't, they run the football more? And then you hear like the coach being like, well, they were in a YW spider scheme with the mic coming over the top, and they had the safeties over high on the cover 2. And then you're like, you're telling this person from the armchair they should have thrown it over the middle. And in reality, like, they've thought deeply about this. I think like Serpin was a good example of, like, I'll ask a question and he'll be like, yeah, and he'll give me 10 pieces of context of how he's thought about it. And I think we sometimes miss that with founders, where it's like, not only do you not know what's going on behind the scenes, you don't know what they're actually thinking about, and don't realize that it's their product, it's their job. And if they're doing their job well, they've thought about it deeply. So I'm going to hand you that one, then I'll be right back.
I'm thinking about where to take this now on the handoff. I could go back to sports. I guess I'll give you the MLB breakdown. We could talk Robert Horry to make Hizzy's day. Actually, what I'm gonna do while Steve is out is, because I can have a one-sided conversation about tariffs. I kid, but not really. I'm gonna bring up Pio's comment, because this really, like, he summed up how I'm feeling probably better than I have described myself this morning. His take yesterday, this is not what I was referencing. Just first time seeing this, I was looking for the one I'm going to pin. He said, I like the tariff stuff. It's 90% priced in. The market will continually care about it less and less. You won't remember or think about it again within a few years. I genuinely agree, but here it is. Here's the one I was looking for. Let me pull it up on screen for those tuned in. I don't know about tariffs. I'm not a tariff expert. I'm not an economist. I'm certainly not a Nobel Prize winning economist. So I'm not qualified. But what I can zoom out, and having a little bit of life experience, having built a business, having moved into actually my in-laws' basement at the onset of the 2008 financial crisis, with a home and my family left in Ohio, was probably the absolute worst time in my life to go into business, to walk away from a cushy corporate gig and go into business for myself. But I didn't focus on the economy. I didn't care. I didn't focus on things I couldn't control. I focused on what I could control, what I would do every day. And it resulted into windfall for myself. I started with $90,000 of capital, opened 3 stores, went all in on the business, and grew that to 25, 30 locations in a few years. And a business that went from, again, $90,000 raise to a $30 million a year annual business, and hundreds of employees. And did this, again, walked away from a very cushy corporate gig with all the, the 6-figure pay and all the corporate perks, and left that in October of 2008. I left in October of 2008. A month later, I acquired stores on November 16th, shut them down for a day, and on November 17th, 2008, opened them. And then within the first 12 months, grew from that initial bootstrap startup to 10 locations across multiple states because everyone else was freaking out about the economy. And I just focus on what I can control. And I think Pio here sums up how I'm feeling about tariffs. I don't know about tariffs. I don't know. I'm not not a Nobel Prize winning economist, not qualified to share any macro opinion on this, just how I'm feeling myself. And this is how I feel. I didn't really even try to make myself panic or upset about the tariffs. I really don't care. Maybe I should, but I really don't care. Like Pio, I just don't care because I don't think any of us are going to remember tariffs a year from now. Rates, I think, are going to get cut. Money, I think, will get printed, and markets are going to market. Like the market will go like this. If you zoom out our entire lives throughout really the history of modern financial markets, they go like this. And I think that in due time, we'll get back to money printing season. We'll get back to up and to the right. And I'm going to focus on what I can control, not things that I know very little about, like global trade wars and tariffs. And I just is it concerning? Yes. I feel 10 times more concerning if those of us who can't control anything that happens with tariffs spend our day focusing on it and talking about it. And instead, I'm going to put my head back in the sand and I'm going to go focus on things I can control, like hitting 100 X's in underdog MLB drafts. I'm going to focus on making this show better. We've got 8Con coming up, which, by the way, deadline is today. I'm going to go pin that up top. Deadline is today. If you want to participate, overwhelmingly positive response with participants for the startup competition. We probably should cut it. That's why we haven't been overly hyping it, because we're probably going, I don't know, I shouldn't say this. We may have to cut some that already applied, but if you want to participate, please get your application today, because the date is the deadline. Saying no one will care about tariffs implies you have an understanding of tariffs. I don't have an understanding I don't have a deep understanding of tariffs. I have an understanding of my lived experiences, and that I'm far more productive and far more successful when I can focus on things that I have some control over, and I don't get lost or worry about macro stuff that I have no control over. Maybe this is the worst thing that's ever happened to the US economy, and we're all in it. The Dow dumps, all the markets crash, and we are far worse off a year from now than we are today. Maybe that's an outcome. That is a potential. That's in the range of outcomes. It's also in the range of outcomes that this works and the economy is better a year from now. I don't know. And I think whether they're a Nobel Prize winning economist or they're a crypto Twitter analyst, no one knows for certain how this thing is going to play out. No one knows. It's unprecedented. Technology is unprecedented. The state of the global economy is this is new stuff. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it works. I don't know. But what I'm pretty near certain of, that if I focus on things I can control, I'm going to be far more successful, far happier over the course of the next year, focus on me and what I can control versus global tariffs that I have zero control over, truly zero control over. I also don't vote for the president, so I literally have zero control. Maybe you could say, oh, if you voted for the right person, you could have control. I don't play that game. I don't going to fake myself into thinking I can control what the leader of the United States is doing on a day-to-day basis. I have zero control over that. I'm not going to worry about it. That's me. Like, some people are happier staying dialed in and keeping a pulse on things that they can't control. That's not me. And having, again, the lived life experience, and the last recession that we lived through in 2008 was arguably the most successful run of my life from a builder standpoint, because when most of my peers who were older than me at the time, I was a snot-nosed 28-year-old. Most of my peers that were franchisees were in their mid-40s, and I ran circles around them. They were all freaking out. I was getting their stores for pennies on the dollar because they thought the world was ending in 2008. I didn't think the world was ending, and I knew that I could control whether a store was profitable or not, and it ended up playing out very well for myself, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I don't know about tariffs, but I know that in my own lived experience the last 44 years on this earth, I'm far happier, I'm far more successful when I focus on things that I have control over. That's it. That's my rant on tariffs. I truly wasn't thinking about them at all this morning until like 30 seconds before the show. I really don't care. I'm not going to, after this show, I'm not going to think about tariffs the rest of the day.
There's two separate thoughts there, though. I actually think it's very healthy, and I agree. And I even said this in the war room, like, look, I'm concerned about the direction of where we're going for the first time for most in my life, certainly. Like, I would say probably.
There's nothing wrong with being concerned. I'm just not going to focus on it. It's just okay, there's a smidge of concern, like, oh shit, things could get really bad. I'm cognizant of that. I'm just not going to waste mental energy worrying about something I can't fix.
Right. And I think one, it's focus on what you control. That is generally my MO. Like, I think both things can be true, that you know, I've have concerns about directionally where things are going, and I'm more concerned than I've been in a while. And again, just being honest emotionally, I'm not excited about going into another potential bear market, which, you know, who knows, whatever. I'm not saying, but if we do, like, that's not good for my business. That's not good for me personally. That's not good for my finances. That's not good for jobs. That's not good for my friends. It's not good for my families. So like that concern is there. So I don't think it's necessarily, because I think there's two separate conversations there. I think one conversation, you're not going to think about it because you control what you control. I'm going to do that
by focusing on myself. When everyone else freaks out and their lives get much harder, mine got much easier. And again, the only thing I can equate this current economy to is 2008. I focused on me, and I had the greatest results of my life during a time where everyone else was losing their minds over the economy, was literally losing their minds, freaking out every day. I had a smidge concern, like, oh, this could get bad, but I'm not going to worry about it. I worried about me, and it led to tremendous results. I'm just going to do that again.
Right, which I think is a healthy way to approach. I think a couple things. I mean, I think one, the part where I would say like it separates is saying like I don't care if it's crypto Twitter person or a Nobel Prize winning economist. I think that one of them holds more water in an opinion. If they didn't, we shouldn't have experts at all, right? Like if I came to you about retail and I was like, but if I came to you about retail, Cap, let me finish. If I came to you about retail and then someone on crypto Twitter's like, Cap's an idiot. He's long about retail. We've never seen this retail thing before. And you're like, my experience tells me otherwise. I would trust your opinion over that. So I don't think it's fair to say that, like, part of it. Like, I don't think it's fair to say, like, whether they're a crypto Twitter person or an economist, nobody knows. Like, well, then I could be like talking about retail. Like, well, there's Cap or there's a person who's never done retail in their life. We don't know for sure. Like, opinions have weight for a reason.
But if you look, you can find people on CT who are bearish tariffs. You can find people on CT who think tariffs are good. You can also find Nobel Prize winning economists who think tariffs are good. Paul Romer. Like, if we're going to use that as our benchmark, we should look at all of them, not just the ones who.
No, I have. That's my point. Like, I've tried to look through a multitude of them. Like, Googling and finding one economist who says this could be good versus a multitude of ones who say it's going to be bad, as well as a multitude of other people. Like, that's my point. It's like, I'm trying to look at it as objectively as possible.
Hedge fund manager Ray Dalio, one of the largest, most successful in the world, given another Nobel Prize winning economist. I can go get more. My point is, there's people that have a varied opinions. Even the experts don't unanimously agree on this.
I think the experts largely agree on this. Largely agree on this. And again, this is where I would say, like, if you know, you're talking about, like, I haven't even thought about this till this morning, whereas I've been thinking about this for months and trying to actually give this some, like, legitimate thought. Like, that's where I'm saying, like, I like trying to cite, like, singular examples of things versus more like sort of like overarching things. But that's fine. Like, it's, again, I'm not trying to like debate. We're going to find out whether.
I've also looked at both sides. Thanks to AI now, I can say, give me both competing arguments here. Give me both sides. And I've read this stuff. Like, I don't think about it, but I did the research and I came to the conclusion very quickly that, okay, there's very compelling arguments on both sides of this from world-renowned experts. I'm just going to see how it plays out. I'm not going to worry about short-term decisions that are made that may have long-term implications, but it's the top of the first inning, and we don't know how this is going to play out. And these experts who are going to claim to know exactly how this thing plays out, they've all been wrong before on something. Maybe they have a great track record and they're mostly right, but they also have moments they've been wrong on things in the past, and right now they don't unanimously agree.
Yeah, we're going in circles. I think, like, again, I'm trying to, like, I've looked I've looked into this to try and understand the consensus. That's my general point of view. There is a general consensus on one side versus the other side. That has been my findings. Maybe your findings are different. I find individual examples versus a consensus on one side being different. So, like, that's why I think it's important to, like, again, I think the way you're looking at it is very healthy. I think you should look at it yourself, like, as, like, what can I control? That's how I generally approach my life.
This is going to sound morbid. I get really excited during times like this because the majority of people are going to freak out, as evident by tariffs and the tariff announcement. Majority of people freak out, and that's all they focus on for the majority of their day-to-day lives, for the majority of their weeks, their months, their years. I think it's the greatest opportunity for entrepreneurs, the greatest opportunity for builders, because in times of distraction, when people are so much focus and energy going into things they can't control, it makes it that much easier to win if you focus on things you can't control.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
That's how it played out for me. Like, that's my personal lived experience.
I think it's fine to say, like, you're going to try to approach it that way. I do think
It's not a try. Like try doesn't exist. It's just how
I think it's fine to say you are going to approach it that way. I do think it's shitty if people are going to literally lose like thousands of jobs to be like, you know what, like fuck it, just like pick up your bootstraps and get it. Like not everybody's in that same scenario. Now you are in that scenario, and I think that's great. Not everybody who loses a manufacturing job is like,
I lost the job. Fuck it. I lost the job. I chose to not take a new offer.
I'm not discounting your experience. I'm simply saying that like I have a more multifaceted view where I will control what I will control. I will continue to double down. I'm also not going to just be like, too bad, so sad. Like you lost thousands of jobs. Oh, well, like I think like there is something to be said about that. So we'll see where it nets out. We'll see like what it ultimately results in. Like you said, like we'll see what comes next. We'll see what happens. I was just simply saying that, like to your point, bringing up an economic argument and why it should make sense based on another economist who is like deeply ingrained in this that says it's going to work. I think that is very viable. And those are the things that I've been trying to read on the flip side of it. To your point, with AI, I can find all sorts of things. That's what I've been trying to like dig on.
It's the best thing we've ever had in terms of getting like, I don't want to be one-sided. I don't want to think I always know the right answer. AI has been the greatest invention of our lives to get non-opinionated actual information, real takes on people who disagree with you, people who think differently. And I think that is the best prompt I've ever used in ChatGPT is don't give me the answer, give me compelling arguments to both sides of this. And it's hard to if you actually go through like it's really hard to land on this is the only way this plays out. I just but I
don't think anyone's saying absolutely. I'm not saying absolutely this is the only way this plays out. Like that is like misrepresenting the point. Like my point is I have tried to dig in on the flip side and I haven't gotten a compelling argument against it, at least on the whole. And that's my concern is like when you have that discussion, I agree with you. Like I actually did the same thing. Like I didn't come to this in a vacuum where I'm like, you know what? Like I've decided I don't like tariffs. It was like beyond listening to people who I trust, I actually asked for the argument against it. The crazy part about it is, I kid you not, I asked Grok about it and Grok was being negative. And I was like, seems like you're being negative on this. And it said, you're picking up on my vibe. There's a chance, but here's why it's unlikely. And like Grok was arguing, like when I was saying, tell me why this works, Grok was arguing against it, which was worrisome, like based on historical data. But, you know, we'll have to see like how it works in practice. Like to your point, like my board point is like, I think there's two very separate discussions to have there, which is I think you are doing it the right way, which is approach what you can control, drive forward, see how you can capitalize and make this work for you. I think on the flip side of it, there's a whole different discussion about like, you know, what that means for friends, families, jobs, sponsors for the show, things like that. And I think that's where I will be focusing my energy on trying to make it work.
And I think it actually benefits us. I think it benefits us greatly in the term of sponsors. Will some of our sponsors become more conservative? Will they be stricter with their budgets? Absolutely. There's also going to be a lot less competition because creators will give up. Creators will get worried. They'll freak out. Like they'll stop working on growing their business. Like it's just, when I said I had an incredible run during the recession, Cincinnati, Ohio, bought 2 stores for $1 each. There was owner financing. We bought 2 stores for $100K, but it was $2 down. Within 90 days, we had paid off $100,000 and sold the stores within a year for $250K because of the recession, because people were freaking out. Like opportunities become at all-time highs when people freak out about macro conditions as an entrepreneur, as a builder. And I think the same will play out in this space. Like, yes, protocols, DAOs, they're all going to get their budgets chopped in half probably. But competition also gets chopped in half because people lose their minds.
Yeah, it just, again, like I struggle with like the freaked out, like the part where it's like when people, like, I think people just, they're like us on the hands, like I'm feeling empathetic towards people while trying to push myself forward, right? That's one thing. I don't, like, again, like people freaking out about it, like in your example of the people who were older and selling their stores, if they're closer to retirement and they want to book a win and they need to make that money, like that's their experience and why they're doing it. And your gain with a longer time horizon is their loss, or they could call it a win on both sides. I don't think it's like when you like the term like people are freaking out. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if people are freaking out about the fact that like they're losing their jobs and things like that's legitimate. Like there are people who are going to freak out about it. It's one in our industry, it's one thing, but like, or if you're talking about like specifically, like,
my
hey,
point is though, it's people that aren't actually at risk of losing their jobs. Like the gentleman I'm talking about, he was a very successful financial advisor. He played for Ohio State, like in the Chris Spielman years. He was fine, but he was freaking out about a short-term economic landscape, which created a tremendous opportunity for myself, who was confident in my abilities to weather the financial storm of a short-term downturn in the economy. He was fine. He didn't have to sell his stores. He was freaking out. And so he basically gave me his stores to wash his hands of the headache and the liability. And I said, sweet. And I believe those type of opportunities those aren't available in a booming economy. People don't hand you the keys to their business in a booming economy. People will hand you the keys to their business in an economy where there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, it's very similar to the idea of like, in the bear market, there is a lot of opportunity to, meet founders and have conversations with real builders. The grifters leave, those sort of things. Like there's always going to be opportunity in downturns. So I would agree with you on that point. I think that is I think that is correct. I see Andrew jumped up, and then we should daily market update before we get out of here, because I think we missed on that one. We also didn't promote, so we'll keep it up for tomorrow. We didn't promote the ENS, low entries to the ENS thing. So if you want to win some money, if you are listening today, we have an ENS tweet pinned up top. I'm giving away $100, and the founder or the CEO of Para is going to be giving away $100. Sign a friend or family member up for an ENS using Para. We'll pick one person who puts their ENS in the comments to win $100. Theoretically, not saying this for the sponsors, you could set up your own one for a friend and family member and set it up for them and bring it to them and actually, be able to potentially collect a reward. So there's only a couple of entries so far in that. So I recommend retweet, comment, set up an ENS using Para for some people. We'll talk about it again tomorrow, just because I know we are we're running short on time. We got to do the market update. Plus, we got to get Andrew in here. Andrew, GM, sir.
Guys, good morning. Very heated conversation in a good way, of course, in a good way. The past 2 weeks have been filled with many different twists and turns. I'm going to be honest. ETH down, I think, 46% now since January is really incredible. BTC down maybe 12%, 13%, which is actually not too bad considering how stocks are performing. Actually, not too bad in hindsight. But I have a question. I do have two questions. One of them is funny. The other one's serious. First one being, are you guys tired of winning yet?
Yeah, I know that's that was what we said. We will be so tired of winning, everyone will make all the money is what we were told. Has not quite delivered on that one. Are you tired of winning yet?
I'm very tired of winning.
If this is winning, I am a bit tired, I should say.
I'm a bit tired of it, to be honest. How are we losing if this is what winning feels like? On a serious note, that you guys did mention the cycle of recession. There's this huge debate that's going on right now about the traditional 4-year cycle being done, which means obviously 2 years on, 2 years off for bear market, bull market. If that's true, and there's a possibility it could be true, that means bear markets that usually last 2 years are not going to be lasting 2 years anymore. So it's very well possible if we enter a recession, aka bear market, might not last 2 years, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months. We have no idea. But if that theory is correct, then the opposite is obviously very true. What's your guys' thoughts on that, I guess, prediction, so to speak?
I think you are correct. I think you are correct in that we are in what I would call unprecedented times, right? Like there is new, like each market has had some new thing that's introduced to it. The invention of Bitcoin, if you talk about crypto, the invention of Bitcoin, ICOs, Coinbase entry into the space, NFTs, and now we have this. And I think each cycle has had a different sort of personality to it and a new element that has been drawn into it. So I would agree with you. I actually would say it's completely unpredictable because, to your point, tomorrow Trump could be like JK on the tariffs and the market's going to go zooming upward and then everyone's going to say everything's great. And so I think like your point is correct in that we don't know what's going to happen. And I think the market, I don't know if it's going to be shorter or longer because it's like, in theory, if we entered I'm not saying this is happening. This isn't my doom and gloom. And the ultimate bad end of things, if we enter a 3-4 year terrible cycle in the world where we are just absolutely down horrendously and things are just going wrong, then it's like, well, then this bear market is going to last much longer. But if we enter a time when the converse, like where things turn around and, rates get cut, money printed, everything goes well. It's like, well, then it's going to be the opposite of that. So I think you're right. I think I think predicting based on past cycles is much more difficult now. That includes both the good and the bad. And I think to your point, depending on who you ask, what's interesting, I'll build on Andrew's observation, depending on and this is where, just to like kind of build on what we said earlier, one of the reasons I try my best to look at things as objectively as possible with like both sides of it, and nobody's perfect. I'm not saying I'm like perfect at it, but my goal is to have like LLMs argue against me and check people who disagree. I listen regularly, by the way, to podcasts and watch videos that are like completely counter to my point of view. Because I think depending on who you ask and depending on what their agenda is, some people will tell you that, we'll just follow the Bitcoin cycle and you're going to see this happen. And other people will tell you, you can't follow the Bitcoin cycle because so like people do it based on their own personal agenda and perspectives. So I think like source of data and information is hyper important in anything. And my general take after looking at that is, look, I don't think we can confidently call it one way or the other. So Andrew, go ahead and get back in here, but I think you're right.
Steve, it's interesting because I'm in the same place that you're currently in, and like usually there's like tell signs from a behavior standpoint that like exist. So I made a couple literally phone calls like this week. A couple of buddies that I have live in Vegas full time year round, so that they're consistently. A couple of buddies I know obviously live in New York as well. So two different worlds, and they both have said that from the past like I think 4 to 6 months ish that the nightlife has slowed down. They said that it's slowed down, and like that can be a telltale sign of like what we know is coming, people spending less money. Obviously, let's use the word of recession, which is overused, I think. But to me, that's a telltale sign. I've been fully transparent. I've been, fully out of the market for at least a month now. Don't really own much. I'm just going to keep stacking cash, going to sit on it, going to wait, to be honest. I don't want to deploy anything because I don't know where it's going to go. Happy to miss the upside though. Done enough this cycle to wait for the next one, to be honest. But there's a lot to consider. I'm not going to jump into a fucking cold tub, I'll be honest, right now.
Nice. Yeah, no, I got you, man. I would be inclined to agree with you. Like I think that I'm not out of the market. Like I tend to be somebody who just continues on and keeps marching on. But yeah, I'm definitely going to continue to like, and again, my day-to-day isn't going to change. Like I talk about it like I focus on my family, I focus on my friends, I focus on my job and what I can control. It's not, but I'm also not going to lie about the fact that I woke up this morning feeling very uneasy, and that's just where my head's at, and that's okay too. Like it doesn't make how I'm feeling less valid. It just means that I woke up feeling a certain type of way, and not everybody, I'm not asking other people to feel the same way I feel. I'm simply saying that that's how I woke up feeling, and I'm hoping that things turn around and get better. But I'm going to, for me personally, I'm going to focus on my health and wellness. I've been doing better about that category lately. I haven't talked about it much, but I've been doing better. Focus on my kids and my family, focus on my job, and, just hope that things net out the right way and it doesn't affect me in a negative way. But we'll see what ends up happening. But I appreciate the thought exercise just because, like, yeah, like I think the cycles, bringing it back to crypto, the cycles of crypto are always going to be, I think, moving forward. I don't think we can ever say that one thing is an indicator of the next in crypto in particular because of the difference in laws, regulations. It is a very different industry. Cap, we should do our daily market update though. We have it was a busy morning going through that. So why don't you get that? Or I forgot. Oh, I agreed to play all videos, didn't I? Moving forward. So I will get that sucker teed up and we'll run that we'll run that getting ready to go.
It's market update time. Let's set the play. Powered by Awaken, the smart tax way. From crypto flips to DeFi stacks. They keep it clean. Got your back. Grab your coffee. Let's break it down. Daily update right now.
Time for the daily market update powered by Awaken, the best way to handle your crypto taxes with integrations across top exchanges and blockchains, plus AI-powered transaction labeling. Awaken makes tax season easy. From NFTs to DeFi to meme coins, Awaken has you covered. Get $50 off with code COFFEE at awaken.tax. That's $50 off when you use code COFFEE at AWAKEN Cap.
Save the best for last. This is maybe why we didn't think about our daily market update till now. It's been a bloody day in the streets. Bitcoin down 4.42% to 81K. Do we hold 80K today? Who knows? ETH down 5%, not to be outdone, down 5.42% to 1764. XRP down 6%. BNB down 3%. Solana down 10%. Double digits drop down to 113. Doge down 8%. Cardano down 8%. Tron down 2%. Not a good bloody day in the streets. Heading over to the NFT side of things, though, a little different story. We've got Bored Ape still holding that 15 ETH floor, up 1% on the day. Pudgy's down 4.6%, but leading volume 9.59. They gave up 10 ETH floor, but still doing strong, all things considered. Those steady teddies holding steady at the 105 bear. A bear trading around $7. So solid mint out, almost a 10x for the new mint there on Barachain. Doodle's down 3% on the day. Mutant Ape's down 2.3% on the day. Milady's down 2.4% on the day. Mean Land Captain's down 8%. The big loser down to 0.67. Taproot Wizards showing a little life, up 5% on the day, up to 0.15. Little Pudgy's down 4%, and Azuki down basically flat, down 0.7%. That's our daily market update brought to you by Awaken Tax. Head to awaken.tax. Use code COFFEE at checkout for $50 off. Get your taxes filed, kids. Steve, fun show today. I was thought we'd talk a lot of baseball. Didn't talk any baseball. We did talk a little bit of goats, and while I'm not ready to hand him the title yet, I think of all the current players, Ohtani might be the most accurate to include in the conversation for greatest of all time in the respective sports. A guy he's got unmatched aura. I don't know if you saw, hit another walk-off last night, comes to the plate in the ninth inning, tie game, standing ovation from the crowd. The guy just goes yard his first pitch. Like, he is, not only is he like debatably the greatest athlete, to play Major League Baseball currently, he does it in a way that is just, he's got that aura. He has that, I don't know, the vibe. Like, he is an absolute star. Glad to see he's in LA. And his walk-off home run was the reason we turned 7 into 700 last night in the MLB streets. So appreciate Ohtani. Just shy of shipping the thing for $3,000, but we'll take the 100x and we'll fire again today. Muted. Nope. My end.
No, it's my bad. It's my bad. I was gonna say, it's crazy that Ohtani's so good that the Dodgers are, I should say the Dodgers are so good that they're like, look, you're a really good pitcher, but honestly, at this point, we just don't need you on the bump because you're just so good, because we're so good. But no, again, that's another thing with baseball. Going back on my way to stay relevant baseball rant from yesterday, it's like they've got so many fantastic marketable stars, and they just don't do shit with them. Like, I don't see Ohtani anywhere, and he is, and I know he's got a translator and all those things.
Baseball is the worst marketing of all professional sports. They're horrible. How they started this season was just a giant cluster. Like, I don't know. They need to fire their marketing department and start over, because you're right. They have actual marketable stars in major markets. I mean, shit, the two greatest stars, probably Ohtani and Aaron Judge, are in the two largest markets in the U.S. Like, how they're not, doubling down, tripling down on this, it just makes no sense.
Aaron Judge had 3 home runs the other day. Do you know what would happen if Justin Jefferson caught 3 touchdowns in a game? It would be everywhere. It's just, there's, it's just, they just do such a poor job with it. So, baseball is just, Ohtani is like, I don't know. But the baseball's at the point where, I kid you not, if you ask people who won the Super Bowl last year, most people will tell you Philadelphia. If you ask people who won the World Series last year, a lot of people will be like, was it the Yankees? Was it the Dodgers? Like if you ask the past 5 World Series winners, markedly less sports fans will get them than the last 5 NBA champions, than the last 5, fucking Super Bowl winners. Like, it's just very, very, it's brutal. So, but yeah, in any case, we shall see where all this nets out. Like, the economy, like you said, like, good. I think, look, I'm glad to hear both perspectives. I'm glad to hear people plowing through it and enjoying it. And I hope that it, I'm not
enjoying it. I'm just not thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm glad people are.
I know I'm not like enjoying other people's misery and those that are freaking out. Like, I'm empathetic to that. It's just not my journey.
Yeah. So we'll see where the whole thing couple other things.
Just real quick cleanup. We didn't hit on Doodle stickers. I think stickers on TG is maybe another conversation. They sold out 4,400 yesterday at $100 a pop. Something there. You saw a couple posts from Austin. He thinks all big brands are going to be, have a Telegram strategy in the next 6 months.
He said they made 400K in 15 minutes on LinkedIn on that. We should definitely hit on that.
4,400 of them at $100 a pop. That's a massive win. I mean, it's in near 100% margin. Like it's a pretty big deal. And then there's some drama over on Ape Chain. I don't have all the details, but we might roll into that a little bit tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be curious if we should find a good Ape Chain expert. Obviously, we hang out there, but like I'd love a good Ape Chain expert to help us sort through.
I'll find Diablito is catching me up, and I saw some on the timeline. I just didn't go deep into it, the exact specifics, but some shenanigans around mints, rares getting sniped, pre-reveal, that sort of stuff. That not the first time, and because the community is so tight, I think they will very quickly not support those that are doing the funny business.
I agree with that. I think the community's done a good job on that. And then I know we hit on it like briefly, but Garga saying saving our shot. Someone said is redacted, still in the pipeline for a persistent state. And Garga said the market is absolutely dog shit right now. If tokens that raise 100 million or only 40 million market cap literally on the day of launch does not bode well for new things. Need to use our gunpowder when it's right, and it can have the biggest impact. Agree. Obviously, you can't time the perfect market, but you only have so many shots. So I agree with the general consensus that it is good to ensure that you are, that you're able to, be careful on that sort of stuff. So I agree with that sentiment that like they should probably be sparse when they take their best possible shots and make sure it works. Anything else on your end, Cap, before we get out of here?
I think we're good. I think I've exhausted my feelings on tariffs and how it's mostly nonsense for the majority of us human beings to spend our time and energy worrying about it. But that's my personal opinion. If you want to absorb, consume your life with worrying about global trade wars and macro conditions, more power to you. I'm not an economist. So I don't have to do that. And I just choose not to. And I remain a lot happier as a result.
Yeah, which is totally fine. I think it's cool. Like, that you live your life that way. I don't think it's nonsense.
I'll educate myself enough to be able to speak, to share an actual opinion on it. I'm just not going to think about it other than being able to share that opinion.
Yeah, perfectly healthy. I think there's a difference between like people digging in on something because they're curious about how the world works and, making an informed opinion on it versus like letting it govern their lives. And I agree. People shouldn't let it govern their lives as long as it doesn't affect you materially, and then you need to figure out what you need to do. I understand it affects people materially if they're trying to do that. So,
and those people the people that are being affected materially, it's, I think, arguably the most important ones that need to focus on themselves and what they're going to do next, not worry about the job they lost last week or the job they're going to lose next month. Like, that's not going to fix anything. It sucks. It really does suck, but it's not going to worry about it. It's not going to fix things.
Yeah, I think deeper discussion, but I don't want to dive in too deep on that one again. But I think I agree. Like, focus on what you can control your best, and see how you can help yourself moving forward. But that said, I think it's let's let everyone sail off into their day. Appreciate everyone coming through this morning. We will talk to everybody bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody.
Thanks for tuning into Coffee with Captain, powered by ApeCoin. We hope you enjoyed the show, and remember, nothing we discussed today is financial advice. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and we'll see you soon. Have a great day.
Welcome to the future.